победит.
ВДВ, с неба привет, ультрамариновый набок-берет. Тельник с волной и море погон, с неба навеки десант обручен. ВДВ, сколько побед, из парашютов белый букет. Радугой мирный парят купола, слава десанту, честь и хвала. В Центральном парке салют в Москве. Мечтают парни о ВДВ. Любым оружием владеть легко. Знамя победы главней всего. ВДВ, с неба привет, ультрамариновый набок-берет. Тельник с волной и море погон, с неба навеки десант обручен. ВДВ, сколько побед, из парашютов белый букет. Радугой мирный парят купола, слава десанту, честь и хвала. Честь и хвала. В горах, лесах атаку вихрем ведет десант, срываясь ливнем внезапно вниз. И только ставка по жизни жизнь. ВДВ, с неба привет, ультрамариновый набок-берет. Тельник с волной и море погон, с неба навеки десант обручен. ВДВ, сколько побед, из парашютов белый букет. Радугой мирный парят купола, слава десанту, честь и хвала. ВДВ, с неба привет, ультрамариновый набок-берет. Тельник с волной и море погон, с неба навеки десант обручен. ВДВ, сколько побед, из парашютов белый букет. Радугой мирный парят купола, слава десанту, честь и хвала. Честь и хвала. Честь и хвала. Честь и хвала! Ха!
Ось наша славна Україна зажурилася, а ми тою червону калину підіймемо. Славну Україну, гей, розвеселимо, а ми тую червону калину підіймемо, а ми нашу славну Україну, гей, розвеселимо. Розпочали стрільці січові з ворогами там. А ми тою ярою пшеницю відберемо, а ми нашу славну Україну, гей, розвеселимо. А ми тою ярою пшеницю відберемо, а ми нашу славну Україну, гей, розвеселимо. Червону калину підіймемо,
Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптя посорбати довбані щі, та трохи у щах перегрівся навар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Зі сходу припхались до нас барани, для восстановлення великої страни, найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Їх доводи, всяке озброєння, різне, ракети, потужні машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, і ми зачаїли на орків образу, з бандитів російських робить примар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, на вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто ж винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар. Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає їх цар.
everyone, I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
Good evening, everybody. It's good to be with you once again.
And tonight we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of the war in Ukraine here on day 86. This is the second day of the 11th week of the war, and it's honestly unbelievable to think that Ukraine has made it this far and has lasted this long, considering most Western analysts did not expect the country to survive beyond 3 days. We've seen that they've done incredibly well, and although we have been getting a little bit of concerning information today showing that the Ukrainian lines may be weakening for a short time, of course, they've still held an incredibly long time, and it looks like they'll be holding for the foreseeable future. Now, before we get into the schedule for the news tonight, I want to once again mention to everyone that the merchandise, the limited edition run that is the Mr. Lunchtime merchandise, will be taken off the store tonight at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, which will be about an hour before the stream ends. So if you want some Mr. Lunchtime merch, make sure to get it now, because it's going to be gone incredibly soon, and the drop will be ending just in a matter of a few hours from now. So with that, let's get into the schedule for the news. Starting off today, we'll be covering the Kiev area. We have some more news of war crimes being committed in the Bucha area, and we also have an interesting flower bed to look at in Kiev. We'll then be moving outside of Kiev and into, not Russia. For some reason, I thought I had a bit of news from Russia today. Apparently not. We'll then be moving straight from Kiev to the location unknowns, and we'll be covering all of those in one large group. Once we cover all the location unknowns, we'll start moving towards the Kharkiv and Poltava area today, but we will actually take a pause right there to answer 3 questions from the chat. Once we answer those 3 questions, we'll then move on to the Kharkiv and Poltava area, and we'll also cover the Severodonetsk area, that part of the front line. We will then once again pause to take 3 more questions from the chat, and then we'll cover everything south of Severodonetsk. This will include the news from Lazova today and everything throughout the rest of the Donbas and the southern front. We'll then finally wrap out today's news with a speech from President Zelensky. We have a decent amount of news and information to go over today, so I hope you all strap in, because a decent amount of it is actually incredibly interesting and is showing some very important and crucial information. Starting off in Bucha today, we have now gotten more video evidence of the war crimes that were committed during the Russian occupation of the Bucha Hostomel Irpin area. Give it just a second. It looks like it's taking a second to load. And here's the video. So let me put this on full screen for y'all. Here you can see the Russian soldiers marching off some Ukrainian soldiers into a back alley. You can see a Russian marked vehicle right there. You can also see a captive in a blue sweatshirt, which is very important because that'll be a very crucial piece of identification later. But you now see that they've been lined up against the fence. And that's the end of the video. They were lined up against a fence, and it's usually common, although we didn't see it in the video, for enemy combatants to be lined up against a wall or a fence before they're to be gunned down, pretty much, and executed. Of course, we didn't see that here in the video, but I do believe later on we got some drone footage the other day of the man in the blue sweatshirt laying down dead on the ground amongst all of his other comrades. We'll, of course, be trying to keep up to date on more information and evidence coming out of the Bucha Hostomel Irpin area of the war crimes that were committed, because this was one of the most prolific areas in terms of war crimes that ever happened anywhere along the front line. And I hope that all of the Russian soldiers that were in this area are held accountable for their crimes, because this is a straight-up war crime. There's another way to explain it, and it's sickening to even think that Russians conducted so many of these kinds of executions all over the Bucha Hostomel Irpin area, and also in the village of Borodyanka, just north and west of that large suburban area. We're now going to move into Kiev, where we've gotten a little bit of happy, more spry news today, as the Ukrainians are getting very creative with the flower beds that they're starting to make for this summer. Here we can see a flower bed that looks a lot like a tank being dragged away by a tractor. I have to say, the Ukrainians have been pretty creative, and also they keep in high spirits, and this is one of those great examples of the Ukrainians and the civilians in general keeping very high spirits as they have now shaped a flower bed to look like a tank, and they've also put a tractor in front of it. It's good to know that the Ukrainian civilians still do have a great sense of humor, and I hope that the Ukrainian farmers still have a great amount of success in capturing Russian tanks, because although we've seen that dying down as the war keeps on going, every once in a while we do see a farmer get a new tank. So hopefully that continues on, and once again, great amount of praise for the morale that Ukrainian citizens continue to have throughout the course of this war, and we have never seen it waver, regardless of where they are. We're now going to move out of Kiev, because that's all the news we have from that area today, and we're now going to move down into the location unknowns. And I just want everyone to know in advance before we move through these, there's like half of these are Stugna attacks, and we all love a good Stugna attack, right? I already know the answer to that. The answer is yes. And so we're going to start off this entire location unknown segment with a Stugna attack. Here we can see an unknown Ukrainian unit in an unknown location, once again wiping out another Russian vehicle.
Давай. Ждем. Выстрел.
We can now see them fire the Stugna. The round is now on the way, and they will slowly start to guide down the crosshairs towards the horizon where the tank actually is. That's standard firing practice, as we've seen multiple times with Stugna operators. They now have the crosshairs dead on the tank, and the missile is flying straight towards it. And we're just waiting for that hit, and it was hit dead on. Everyone, of course, started cheering, and they were very happy, and of course, it's wonderful to see that that Stugna crew once again got another confirmed hit. The cost of a Stugna and the missile that it launches versus the cost of a Russian tank makes the Stugna an incredibly effective weapon based just off of the costs alone, and then also off of its accuracy and its effectiveness rating, I guess you could say. It is by far much better than a Russian beam battle tank when they're versed up against each other. And usually we don't really see a lot of evidence of Stugna crews being wiped out. So of course, that's always wonderful to know as well, is that the Stugna and how it operates keeps the crew incredibly safe. And those of you who may not know or may not have been around for me to explain this, the Stugna is a very special anti-tank system. Unlike just imagine a bazooka or an RPG where you have to shoulder the launcher yourself and stand out in the open and look at what you're firing at, kind of like a rifle. The Stugna can actually be set up away from the crew, and the crew can operate it from this little laptop-like thing. And so the crew is not visible to the enemy tank whatsoever, but the Stugna launcher can see the tank itself and fire at it. So it makes it incredibly safe for the crew to engage enemy tanks, because they're never at the threat of being directly fired on when trying to destroy it. So an incredibly good system, and today we've seen video after video after video of the Ukrainians using these with great efficiency. They've never missed in any of the videos I've seen today, and they have never missed over the course of this entire war. So here's the next bit of footage where we can see Ukrainian paratroopers attacking a Russian FOB. Now this was really interesting to see, and I don't know exactly what this is. I want to suppose that this was a greenhouse prior to the war, but I'm not exactly certain. Well, a greenhouse, really a nursery. I think that'd be a more correct pronunciation. But we can see a Euro 4320 fertilizing the flowers. It looks like there will be some new sunflowers growing in that nursery. We can now see artillery shells landing all around the nursery, around the vehicles, which are sandwiched down the little roads in between what appears to be these large greenhouses. And we can see that things aren't really going well for the Russians in this particular spot. And I'm sure that a lot of them have panicked, most likely abandoned the vehicles, and run away as fast as possible, because that's usually what we see on video if we ever get a close-up. We can now see that that Euro 4320, which may have been a fuel tank, apparently has ruptured and is burning uncontrollably. The thick black plume of smoke does tell us that it was most likely a fuel tanker on the 4320 chassis. We can see that the fire continues to rage. It appears that there's an MTLB in there that will begin to burn, and we can see that the fire has spread to a T-72B3, hopefully destroying it as well. We can also see... Wow, what was that? Let me take a look at that. That looks like a normal T-72A. Hopefully it is. That means that they're really having to pull stuff out of the graveyard, because I don't see any ERA tiles on the front of the turret, and I don't see any additional armor on the side. So it looks like it's a base model T-72A that they would have built in the 70s, but the one to the left of it is certainly a T-72B3. You can tell because of the ERA blocks that are near the rear of the turret. But with that, another Russian FOB has been destroyed. With it, a decent amount of supplies, maybe gas. We can actually see a Russian running towards the fire. Maybe he's trying to look for wounded members of his unit, not entirely sure, but that FOB was damaged extremely and hopefully will hinder the Russian efforts in the area where it was struck. In the next clip, we can see Mi-24s attacking Russian units. Of course, we don't see a lot of footage of the Ukrainians using helicopters, but it's starting to become more and more prevalent and common in general for us to see Ukrainian air units, such as helicopters and aircraft, operating at a higher frequency at this point in the war, and I believe that's mostly because the anti-air threat that the Russians once posed has been diminished enough that aircraft can fly with a relative percentage of safety, I guess you could call it. Here's the video of the Ukrainian Mi-24s attacking Russian positions. We can see the typical upwards tilt as they fire the rockets. This seems to be the going strategy, although it does lead to inaccuracy in the rocket spread, but the pro of it is that it leads to a much more increased range. We can now see the Mi-24s hitting the ground and trying to fly off as fast as possible, and we can see this Mi-24 pass right over the observer. We can see the other Mi-24 following up behind. And incredibly wonderful to see. We know that the Ukrainian helicopter units have been working heroically during this war, with the most famous example of their work being the strike on Belgorod, where they flew 30 miles over enemy territory to the city of Belgorod and attacked oil silos. Once again, it was incredibly impressive. The Ukrainians have never stepped up and taken credit for it, but who else would have conducted that attack rather than the Ukrainians? So I have to give them credit for that. It was an incredibly daring raid. It was very risky, and somehow they managed to attack the fuel silos, and the helicopters managed to fly out unscathed because the Russians never came out with reports or evidence that those helicopters had been shot down. We're now going to move on to the next bit of location unknown news, where we can see a BMP being destroyed by an RPG-22. Now, talking about Russian equipment is always like talking about an alphabet soup. It always sounds like we're talking about BLTs and we're about to order ourselves up a delicious one. But with Russian equipment, it's always just a massive abbreviation game. So to explain what that was, a BMP is like an armored personnel carrier. It just carries around infantry and has a small gun on it. And an RPG is an anti-tank grenade launcher, I guess you could say, although RPG doesn't stand for rocket propelled grenade. That's something that's clearly known. But anyways, I'm not going to ramble too long. Here's the video. Here we can see them lining up the RPG-22 and firing it. We can see them running off, and then we can see the follow-up footage of the BMP-2 it hit further down the road. Apparently it hit a fuel tank because that fire looked like a fuel fire, and now it's just a general fire as it appears to have exploded the ammo as well. Twice, actually. Well, 3 times. 4 times? 4 times. 4 times the ammo exploded. I thought it only exploded once, but then it just kept on going. So it actually led to a fuel fire, and then it had 4 subsequent ammo detonations. So that was a very interesting thing to see. And it's great to know that the RPG-22 is being used in its niche in attacking lightly armored vehicles. We're now going to move on to the next bit of location unknown news, where we've got a streak of Stugna attacks. Everyone's favorite. Everyone loves them. We can see that the Ukrainians today delivered. Oh, that's got GTA 4 music in it. We can see here a Russian vehicle moving down a road as the Stugna crew is looking at it. I don't know if they have fired the missile yet. We haven't seen the camera shutter, which is... There we go. The missile has fired now. We can see the missile on its way, and the tank is moving down the road. Clearly marked with a Z, as we could see earlier on in the footage. We can now see that Stugna directly hit the APC and knocked it out. Once again, wonderful footage to see, and it's great to know that the Stugna anti-tank crews are doing marvelous work, especially today, in knocking out Russian tanks more so than the Russians are able to knock out the Ukrainians. Right now, the ratio of Ukrainian units, well, actually Russian units knocked out to Ukrainian units is still 9-1, an incredibly high ratio, and that is telling you that as far as a defensive war, Ukraine is winning, at least in the numbers, and also in the front line as well. We're going to move on to the next clip of a Stugna attack. This is an entirely different Stugna attack in an entirely different location, and we can see them attacking a TOS loading vehicle. It's got copyrighted music, so I'll have to mute that. But we can see here they're looking at the TOS reloading vehicle filled with the thermobaric missiles, and we can now see that the ATGM is on the way towards this TOS. Well, the TOS reloading vehicle. We can now see them aiming it down onto the target, and it hit, and it looks like all the thermobaric missiles mostly just went up with it. So it looks like the Ukrainians once again have set up another portable campfire, and hopefully they'll be able to cook a large amount of marshmallows and hot dogs over that fire, or whatever the Ukrainians cook up on during like campfire and camping and stuff like that. I don't know what they would cook up. Maybe like shebereki and shashlik. I don't know. I mean, like those are traditional foods, and I feel like they would be eating traditional foods like Americans eat hamburgers and hot dogs. With that, we're now going to move on to the next bit of Location Unknown news, where we can see another Stugna attack. The Ukrainians have not given the Russians a break today, and the Russians have to be crying about the amount of Stugna attacks that have been committed against them. And also, I'd like to give special credit to the 80th Airborne Brigade, because most of these videos came out from their unit today. So it looks like they've been working overtime with their Stugna units.
Done!
We can now see them lining up the Stugna on a Russian vehicle that appears to be a BTR-82 with some other kind of vehicle to the left of it and in the rear. The missile is now firing and traveling towards the target. The crosshair has been kept dead on it during the entire launch sequence. Yeah! And I'm going to have to mute that right there so we don't get copyrighted, but you can hear them all cheering, and of course, it was incredible to see that they did knock out another tank. We can see this missile traveling towards another Russian vehicle, and hitting it dead on. Once again, a second kill from the Stugna unit, and they are doing an incredible amount of work just for a Stugna crew, which isn't a large amount of people, and it's not really an expensive unit, but they are wiping out tens of millions of dollars in Russian equipment in some of these videos, which is crazy to me. Sometimes just hundreds of thousands with the APCs, but still. Moving on to the next bit of Location Unknown news. What is this thing? And I'm going to actually pull this up and explain what this is on stream. This thing is a KVS Anti Drone. Oh, let me mute that. As we can see here, he's showing off the Anti Drone. It looks like it's actually made on some kind of a... I can't exactly tell you, honestly. I'm not sure if that's... Yikes, I just don't really know how that thing's actually set up. But let's pull this up and let's see what it is. The KVS Anti Drone. So let's see. So this is from, well, this one is not the same one that was in the video, but it is an anti-drone, pretty much weapon. And so the explanation of what this is, it's effective in fighting drones approaching the protected area by suppressing drone-controlled and navigation channels, which leads to neutralization and landing of the intruder. So pretty much what this does is that this interrupts the connection in between the operator and the drone, and hopefully the drone will force land itself exactly where it got disconnected, leading the drone into Ukrainian hands, and also disabling the drone from being used. So this thing here that we see in this video can actually be aimed at a drone. He could pull the trigger, and in theory, it's going to disconnect that drone from its operator, and it will no longer be usable. So if that drone is carrying any kind of munitions, like the solo cup grenades, the drone is just going to land with them, and the Ukrainians get a free solo cup grenade. So hopefully they can get a couple of those, and I'm starting to see a larger amount of these in most of the drone units, as it's becoming a more common sight as the war goes on. So whoever's providing those weapons to them, or whoever's buying them for the Ukrainians, have to give them a huge kudos and a lot of praise, because those systems will hopefully be used effectively and interdict the Russian drone operations to a pretty good degree. Moving on to the next bit of Location Unknown news, we can see another bridge crossing was destroyed in another area of Ukraine on the Seversky Donets River. Literally, the Russians cannot catch a single break during this war. Here we can see another bridge crossing that was laid out, and of course I can't play the music, but it was destroyed, and around 12 vehicles went with it. We can see some of these in the water, and also near the shorelines, and you can also see the sunken pontoon bridge right there. So once again, the Russians have had another failed bridge crossing, and as far as I've been able to hear today, there are rumors that they are attempting another bridge crossing in another location on the Seversky Donets River. I haven't been able to confirm where that was or get any video evidence of it, but so far with the Ukraine's 2-0 record of knocking out pontoon bridges before they can actually be used, I'm very sure that that bridge will not be used as well, and it will just lead to more losses and more casualties on the other side, on the Russian side, during this pointless war. Just look at this. I mean, it's not as many vehicles as there was at that one bridge with 100 vehicles, but still, 12 is no laughing matter. That's a pretty sizable number of vehicles. And we can see that some of them don't even appear to be damaged, they just look to have been abandoned after the artillery shells started to land. We can also see some kind of special equipment vehicle there. It looks like some kind of engineering tank, most likely. And now we can see the destroyed pontoon bridge right there, drifting off to the side. It appears that there was some kind of a floating boat car. I don't really know what it was called. But we could see that that bridge was supposed to lead into an artillery pot-marked area. And I just don't think that they'll be using that one. And I don't think insurance will cover this. Maybe if they got a little bit of spackling and buffed out the burn marks, I think they'd be able to use these again. But I'm highly doubtful considering that this one appears to be missing some parts. But in all seriousness, once again, another Russian bridge crossing has been interdicted over the Seversky Donets River, and without a bridge crossing over the Seversky Donets River, Russian forces cannot cross and actually threaten an encirclement of Severodonetsk and Lysychansk. So for the moment, there is no actual real possibility of the Russians encircling Severodonetsk and Lysychansk because they currently lack the ability to reach the southeastern side, well, the southwestern side of the city, to actually conduct one. Here in this next clip, we can see that the Ukrainians managed to shoot down a Russian cruise missile. Here in this video, we can see the cruise missile spiraling to the ground after it was shot down.
Лохи сосать нахуй. Ебана уебет сейчас. Да не, она далеко.
Once again, incredible to see. We don't see a lot of cruise missiles get shot down. It's something of a difficult task for the Ukrainians to do, considering they don't have a large amount of anti-missile defense batteries, and they also do not have incredibly modern ones as well, as far as I know. Although countries around the world, like Israel and the United States, have been in the talks and saying that they're going to provide the Iron Dome and the Patriot missile defense systems to Ukraine. Hopefully the Iron Dome system makes it there. We know that the Iron Dome system has a proven track record in interdicting mortar rounds, rockets, and missiles, and so hopefully it will be there soon and will also help to shoot down more of these cruise missiles that are being targeted at civilian infrastructure all around the country. We're now going to move on to the next bit of Location Unknown news, where we can see another Stugna Attack. The Ukrainians literally used these things up today. And we can actually see two perspectives on this one. Of course, it has to be muted, but we can see two perspectives here of the Stugna crew actually using the launcher and also drone footage of that same tank being hit. Here we can see the perspective from the drone operator as the Stugna is fired and the missile is on the way. And then the footage will actually, I believe, show both the Stugna operator and the drone footage at the same time. Yes, here we can see the drone showing the hit right there. You can see the turret go flying off in the direction of where the Stugna hit it. And once again, that is what appears to be a BMP-2 that was destroyed by a Ukrainian Stugna. Great to see, and of course, like I've said with every Stugna Attack video, it always is wonderful to know that the Stugna units are still well supplied and operating to a high degree. For this many videos to come out in one day, this is telling me that there's a large usage of Stugnas across the entirety of the front line, and it appears that they're being met with a great deal of success. With that, we're now going to move on to the next bit of Location Unknown news, where we see an entire destroyed Russian column. This reminds me of the early days of the war when we used to see Russian columns get obliterated because they were just driving through thinking that there was going to be no resistance. Here we can see an entire logistics unit that was destroyed on a back road moving through a forest. And when I say every vehicle, I mean every single vehicle. Once again, great to see. Logistics vehicles are the most important vehicles to target during war, because, well, let me make sure I say that correctly. Because if the combat units are depleted of ammunition, food, and supplies, they can no longer fight. And so while they may have an entire 10 main battle tanks in their BTG, which is the maximum number for a battalion tactical group, if they don't have fuel to run them and ammunition to shoot out the guns, they are just hunks of metal that are sitting in a field. And so a logistics unit being knocked out like this lets us know that a BTG has just been put in a lurch and will most likely have to sit still for a while as they await another convoy that will maybe reach them with the supplies that they'll need to continue on fighting. We're now going to move on to the last 3 bits of location unknown news. Here we can see the Ukrainians giving a sales pitch for the M777. Very happy to see that the Ukrainians are in love with this gun, and we actually have a translation, a speech-to-text translation, showing what the Ukrainians are actually saying about the piece. And so, without further ado, here is the video.
Армата! Постріл!
Більш модернізована, більш технічна, більш точніша, наскільки ми вже знаємо через те, що пробували на ній працювати.
Приціл 550, 554, 546.
А що, яка її сама основна перевага? Чого її так бояться росіяни?
Бо на ній працюємо ми.
So I bet after that video, a lot of y'all are wanting to get your hands on an M777 as well, and I do too, because it looks incredibly good, and it's also got a great track record. According to that video, the M777s were actually attributed with the losses of the 100 vehicles at that pontoon bridge crossing over the Seversky Donets River, and if that is true, that gives you an idea of how much the M777s may change this war just based off of that one example alone, where the Russians lost 100 vehicles over the course of a few hours in just one large artillery barrage from the M777s. We're now going to move on to the next bit of location unknown news, where we can see the Ukrainians that destroyed the BTR yesterday and them laying the mines that led to its quick demise. That kind of rhymed in a way, but here's the video. I have to keep it muted because it does have copyrighted music playing. But also, as a reference, you can see here a white shack, so keep that in mind, and we can see this dirt path moving in between the trees, and the Ukrainians digging out small holes to place the mines in. We can see them moving with incredible speed, and we can now once again see the BTR-82 in that tree line on fire. The most important thing we need to reference, if this was the same spot, was the White House, and there is the white little shack. It's not really a house, it looks more like a shack, but you can see it right there, and that confirms that that Ukrainian unit that was laying down those mines was in the exact same spot, and so that is actually some follow-up footage showing you what the Ukrainian units operate like when laying these mines, and it appears that they're operating in a very gray area of the front line where they can generally move around, and the Russians have no idea that the Ukrainians are there, and the Ukrainians also are just taking guesses that the Russians will be there. They may also be behind the lines, which may explain why this BTR-82 rolled over that road, but at the same time, they do that everywhere. So that's kind of an assumption. But still, we can now see the burning BTR-82 in the exact same spot. And now, based off of that, I'm assuming that this is actually the Ukrainian unit that has now walked back out of the tree line and is inspecting their deed for the day. A very interesting video, and it's very cool to see the actual soldiers lay the mines that would lead to that BTR-82 being destroyed. That's something you don't see often, and so that's why, although that video was showed halfway yesterday, I wanted to make sure to show it again, so that way we could see the crew that laid those mines, and of course, give them the credit on stream for once again destroying another BTR. We're now going to move on to the last bit of location unknown news we have today, and here we can see the Ukrainian Air Force once again operating in the skies as an Su-25 appears to provide close air support. Here's the video. Oh, gotta mute it. That one's definitely going to get me copyrighted. You can see the Su-25 tilting upwards and firing off its salvo of rockets, and you can also see that a first Su-25 did the same thing, but we didn't see that on film. Here we can see some Ukrainian soldiers observing the Su-25s, giving them support, and that ends the video. It's great to know that the Ukrainian Air Force was never actually destroyed. We did, for a while, think that they were destroyed because we didn't get any video evidence, and also the news around the world was that the Ukrainian Air Force had largely been wiped out and was non-existent. But as the previous week has shown, the Ukrainian Air Force does exist, and it is being used to a very high degree in this current phase of the war. With that, we have now covered all of the location unknowns and also all of the Kiev news. And so before we move on to the Kharkiv, Poltava, and Severodonetsk news, we're actually going to answer 3 questions from the chat, and then we're going to move on to that news as well. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
Okay, so hello everybody, it's Enforcer Matt. So first up, we had an issue with our merch store. For some reason, Teespring had taken down our limited edition merch. It is now back up on the store and will be active until 12 o'clock Eastern. So if you want to check it out, feel free to go over there and take a look. We always forget to say it, but the URL is enforcerstore.com. So now moving on to the questions. First up, we have a $20 donation from Sean Collins, who says, please post the music playlist so that I can find it.
I will certainly try and do that. That's something that I always forget to do. But I'm generally just getting these off of YouTube, and then I'll just add the URLs of where I find them. And of course, I would like to give credit to the one guy who made that great video I played in the startup to the stream. It was really good. So I'll make sure to do that, and I thank you very much for the support. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $20 donation from Mom Cat Max, who says, orc blood makes the flowers grow.
Well, that's pretty brutal, but I wouldn't lie, it does. So I thank you very much for the support. Yes, I would have to agree that it does. It seems like the Ukrainians are getting a decent amount of fertilizer, if that is the case, and there will be a large amount of sunflowers growing in the fields before long. So with that, thank you once again, and we're going to move on to the final question of this segment, and then we're going to return to the Kharkiv, Poltava, and Severodonetsk news.
And next up, we have a $20 donation from Tim Swenson, who says, I actually have a question tonight and might stay up long enough for the answer. Is it possible for Ukraine to come back from losing Severodonetsk if that happens?
Yes, it is possible for the Ukrainians to come back from losing Severodonetsk. One does have to remember that historically, many countries lost major cities during some of their wars and did manage to win. For example, in World War II, the Soviet Union lost Kiev, they lost Minsk, they lost really everything that was west of Moscow, St. Petersburg, and Stalingrad. And so in that regard, losing a major city does not set you back. While you may lose that battle, you can still win the war. So I hope that does provide a historical example to say that while the Ukrainians could lose Severodonetsk, which I'm thinking may be a possibility if the Russians are ever able to manage a successful river crossing and then actually hold a foothold on the other side, that may start to become a little bit of a possibility. But right now we're not seeing that. But at the same time, if Ukraine was to lose Severodonetsk and Lysychansk, that isn't the end of the war for them. They can still go on and manage to retake the city if the conditions are right. So with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does answer the question. And with that, we have reached the end of this question segment. If you did send in a super chat, do not fear. We will answer every single one of them by the end of the night, and we will answer the live chat questions as well. Just for some new viewers who may be coming through, I think there is some confusion with us every once in a while. Super chats support this channel. But if you would like to support Ukraine, make sure to subscribe and also hang out for the Sunday fundraiser. That's when we pick a nonprofit that is operating in Ukraine, and we try and fundraise as much as possible for them. So if you would like to support Ukraine, Sunday night fundraisers, if you want to support this channel and help us to keep on doing this, make sure to give us a super chat because that's what helps us to run. And also make sure to like the video if you do enjoy it. So with that, now that we've covered those 3 questions in this question segment, and I thank you all once again for the support, we're now going to move back to Kharkiv, Poltava, and the Severodonetsk news, and then we'll go into our next 3 questions in this segment. Starting off in Kharkiv today, we've seen that the Freedom of Russia Legion has actually captured some Russian soldiers and was interrogating them. It's very interesting, honestly, because this is like these are literally Russians interrogating Russians, so this is like the maximum level of like weirdness, really. You would never think that a Russian-Ukrainian soldier would be interrogating a Russian soldier, but here's the video. It's incredibly interesting.
Что ты приехал сюда? Расскажи, блядь, против кого ты приехал сюда воевать, блядь? Против нацистов. Против каких нацистов, блядь? Ты тут нацистов видел где-то? Видел, блядь, тут нацистов? Вот я русский, блядь, подожди, вот я русский, вот он русский, вот, блядь, ты хочешь сказать, что мы, блядь, нацисты? Ты русский? Какой ты, блядь, подожди, какой ты нахуй... Подожди, блядь, какой ты нахуй русский, блядь? Из-за таких, блядь, как вы, русских, весь мир считает, блядь, что русские это нацисты, блядь. Вы сюда приезжаете, нахуй, мародерствуете, блядь, да? Мародерствовал, сука, рассказывай.
Убивал!
Убивал, насиловал, блядь. Да расскажи, блядь. Да, блядь, настоящие русские сражаются за свободную Россию, а вы, блядь, сука, будете гнить тут до конца своих дней, блядь.
We could see the Freedom of Russian Legion soldiers kicking pretty much their own people. It's really weird when you see the Freedom of Russia Legion capturing Russian prisoners, because it's like, wow, that's weird. It's like a civil war kind of thing here in the United States, where it's like brother against brother, cousin against cousin kind of thing. But still, at the same time, they were treating him a little bit rough, kind of like what we saw in the video the other day of the Russians capturing a Ukrainian soldier. So I think that considering this video, I'm probably going to have to backtrack on how I was talking about the Russians the other day. It looks like everyone's treating the prisoners like this regardless at this point, so I guess this is just how the war has kind of devolved in a way into people being pissed off about what's happening to them. Like, the Russians are pissed off that the Ukrainians are obliterating their men, and so whenever they capture Ukrainian, they're trying to take out the death of their comrades pretty much on the Ukrainian. The Freedom of Russia Legion and the Ukrainian soldiers appear to be mistreating the soldiers, well, obviously because they're invading their lands, and of course that'll lead you to have a great deal of malice. So I think at this point the war has just kind of devolved into that direction, and while it's not necessarily right, it just looks like this is the way things are going to be on both sides at this point. We're now going to move on beyond Kharkiv, but of course we're going to give our analysis of the front line at this moment. So far, we haven't heard of any more frontline changes in the area of north of Kharkiv. Right now, it seems that the Ukrainians are making progress, although we haven't gotten any confirmed evidence or video footage showing what kind of progress they have made. I've heard they may have made it as far as Malny Prokody, but I do not have enough information to confirm that at the moment. We do know that the Russian lines are close to collapse in this area, and it does appear that the Ukrainians are continuing to put pressure on them, which means that this pocket may soon disappear from the map. We also know that they control the western bank of the Seversky Donets River, all the way from Pecheniki all the way up to Vovchansk. I've seen a question come in through Super Chat about Vovchansk, but we will wait to answer that later, so that way we can also recognize you for your support. We're now going to move to the area of Poltava. Today we've seen a missile hit a pond in the Poltava Oblast. We're not really sure where in Poltava Oblast, so I put it near Poltava city itself, but here in this video, you can clearly see that some kind of Russian missile impacted with this pond or river and caused a large splash. Hopefully no one was injured or killed in that explosion, considering that it did occur on a river, as far as we could see on security footage that no one was in. I'm pretty sure that no one was actually injured in that missile attack. So that's good to know, but it is interesting to me why this missile landed in the middle of a pond. I would like to get some more information on that, and I most likely will, and so I will try and keep everyone apprised of that situation if I can find any more information. With that, we're now going to start moving down the front line and past Chuhiv and past where the area of the 25th is operating, and we're now going to move down to the Izium area. Once again, we have gotten no news indicating any kind of activity or action in the Izium area. We're not entirely sure why this is the case. Some say it's because the Russians are still attempting to regroup, but we do have a little bit of information showing today that the Russians have now began to barrage the Ukrainians once more. This may be leading up to another offensive on that area, but we're not entirely sure. That may just be the Russians trying to ensure that the Ukrainians will stay unrelaxed and tense in that area. We're still waiting on some more news from there, and as of now, the situation appears to remain the same as it was for about a week at this point. The Russians have stalled their offensive, and they're attempting to regroup their forces for another push, heading downwards down the M03 towards Slavyansk. We're now going to move in the direction of the northern front near Severodonetsk in general, where we can see a picture of Russian MiG-29s in operation over the area today. What's interesting to me is that a lot of people think that the Russian Air Force is actually incredibly modern, but if you look at their actual array of vehicles that they field, a decent amount of them are old. For example, the MiG-31s and the MiG-29s are somewhat old, and these are actually aircraft the United States went up against in the invasion of Iraq. So, and also the Gulf War as well. So that gives you a generally decent idea of how dated the Russian Air Force actually is. And let's take a look at the Russian Air Force inventory and see what kind of combat aircraft they can field. So we have 249 MiG-29s. The Ukrainians use a decent amount of these. They are somewhat dated, but considering that the Russians and Ukrainians are using them in a sizable number, it does appear that they're almost toe-to-toe in that regard. We can also see that the Russians have 132 MiG-31s, which are, of course, a bit of a dated plane. I believe that it was actually introduced in 1980, which is around the same time as the F-15. So a little bit dated. Oh, I just clicked off the tab. Hang on. Russian Air Force inventory. We can then see that they have 8 MiG-35s. This is an incredibly rare aircraft, and this is getting as close as possible to the most modern aircraft that the Russians are able to field. Considering that they do have Su-57s, they only have 4 of them, and all of them are prototype models, which they will not sacrifice in this war, considering that they're still trying to get information out of them, and also remove most of the design flaws. So the MiG-35 is the best aircraft they can field, and they only have 8 of them. We can see that they have 274 Su-24s. Those are frontline bombers, pretty much. We've seen the Ukrainians using these as well. They also have 194 Su-25s. They also have 229 Su-27s, which I would say is the most comparable thing that you could find compared to, say, an F-15. That's really Russia's version of an F-15 is the Su-27. In fact, I've heard some stories that the Su-27 was built as a direct counterpart to the F-15. Although, yes, the introduction date would actually suggest that, considering that the F-15 was entered into service around 1975, and the Su-27 was pushed into service 10 years later in 1985. So I believe that that would be the case. And with that, we're now going to... Oh my gosh, I did it again. Let me go back to that. So we can see here that the Russians have a sizable amount of Su-27s, very similar to an F-15. They also have some Su-30s, which are nothing more than an improved version of the Su-27 for the large part. They also have 132 Su-34s. The Su-34 is actually a very interesting aircraft. It's a modified Su-27 that has a tandem cockpit for both a pilot and a co-pilot, and it's pretty much Russia's, I guess you could say, light bomber. It's a Su-27 on steroids, pretty much, and designed for a ground attack role. So that gives you a pretty good idea of the Russian Russian Air Force's abilities. I did it again. Golly. Sorry about that, y'all. But you can get a pretty good idea here based off of their roster that they don't have as large an amount of combat aircraft as you would imagine. And considering, I believe that the Ukrainians have managed to shoot down... Let me make sure. How many aircraft has Ukraine shot down? Hopefully we can get a really decent number. They've shot down their 200th aircraft 4 days ago. So going off of that, that means if we were to come through here and try and find a comparable figure, that means that they've shot down, if they were to just shoot down one class of aircraft entirely, almost all of Russia's Su-27s. Of course, this number is varying. You know, they have shot down Su-24s, Su-25s, Su-27s, Su-30s, Su-34s. I don't think they've shot down any... Well, yes, they have shot down Su-35s. I remember that now. And so... they've shot down a sizable number of aircraft, and you can get, based off of that number alone, that they've actually shot down a sizable amount of the Russian Air Force. Not all of it, not half of it, but still a pretty decent figure. And to replace these aircraft would be very difficult. I believe the Su-27s were produced largely in batches, much like most aircraft are. And so actually restarting an assembly line to produce more of these, considering the current sanctions, would be next to impossible. So an interesting thing to note off of that picture, and it's a very interesting delve into the actual Russian Air Force's situation at the moment, and we can now see them using some of their older aircraft like the MiG-29. We're now going to move on to the rest of the front near the Rubizhny area, and we've seen that the Ukrainians have been striking against the Russians in this area pretty heavily today on film. Starting off, we've seen a Russian T-64 get hit in the area of Rubizhny. This is, of course, a pro-Russian T-64, but it might as well be Russian. Here we can see the plume from the explosion as the T-64 was hit. We can then see some kind of action, well, another explosion actually, in behind the tree line on that T-64. The T-64 has now been hit twice. It appears that it's continuously being hit over and over and over. I'm not really sure by what, if they're mortar rounds or whatnot. It does appear to be mortar rounds because they are just kind of hitting in the area. We now see the tank being hit again. That's about the 5th shot. Now we can see the rear engine bay of the T-64 burning, which is telling us that there's an engine fire, letting us know that the tank has been disabled and most likely will not be able to operate. If I remember correctly, and I may be wrong in saying this, I believe that the Russian tank's engines have to be on for the hydraulic system to work. This is not the case in some American vehicles like the M3 Bradley, where the hydraulic system can actually work for a pretty decent amount of time without the engine actually having to be on. But I do not believe that that is the case for the Russian tanks, and also I believe that the engine has to be on for the autoloader to work. So if the engine is knocked out, the tank has been disabled. So a very interesting design flaw, and let's pull that up. Well, no, we're not going to pull that up. That would be too much of a deep dive. The information would probably be hard to find. So we're now going to move on to the next video, which was actually included in the Enforcer short clip summary today, where we can see the Ukrainians hit a Ural 4320 with an ATGM. It doesn't appear that this logistics driver had a great day beyond this. We can now see him looking into the cab of the truck. You can see the doors open, and the ATGM is flying right towards the guy. And I don't think he will be driving that truck any longer. On the bright side, it looks like the Russians won't be using the equipment that was in the back of that 4320 anymore. So with that in mind, what is the situation in Rubizhny and what can we tell? While the Ukrainians have been committing a decent amount of strikes today on Rubizhny, we don't have any evidence to show that the Ukrainians have launched a counterattack in the direction of Rubizhny in an attempt to retake the town. So it appears that the Ukrainians are trying to soften up the Russian units and maybe prepare for a counterattack, or they may just be attacking Russian units and destroying them in a hope to weaken their offensive in the direction of Severodonetsk and Lysychansk. We're now going to move to the eastern side of the front line near Severodonetsk, where today we've seen a heavy mortar in action. Here's a picture of this 240mm, well actually here's the video of this 240mm heavy mortar. We're actually going to have to go to Twitter to see this. And so, here's the video of this mortar.
Задача артиллеристов уничтожить один из мостов через Северский Донецк, который соединяет Северодонецк и Лисичанск. Вот для этого используют 240-миллиметровый миномет бьют по мосту, который расположен в 5 километрах отсюда. Для того, чтобы формирование киевского режима не могли перебрасывать с западного берега на восточный подкрепления и боеприпасы.
Here's something interesting to note, going back through the video. I believe that it is the case that most Russian vehicles cannot operate their hydraulic systems unless the engine is on, because after every single time we saw this tank fire in this video, like right here, the engine sputters on. And you see the exhaust come out of the side right here. And then you can hear it. And so that's letting me get a generally good idea that probably all Russian vehicles have to have their engine on to operate their hydraulic systems. And so if you knock out the engine on a Russian vehicle of any kind, it seems, it most likely means that all of the systems within the tank have been knocked out as well, which will lead the crew to abandon it. And that may be why we see Russian tank crews abandoning the vehicle so quickly, because if the engine goes out, they're screwed, and then they've wasted valuable seconds of time where they could have run for their lives. Another interesting thing about this 240mm heavy mortar is that it appears, from the front at least, that this may be some kind of modified MTLB chassis that has had a large amount of changes made to the rear section of the vehicle, so that way this 240mm mortar can be carried. Just for y'all to know, a 240mm mortar is on the incredibly heavy side. A Malka, which is one of the largest artillery pieces that both sides field in caliber, is a 203mm gun. And so a 240mm mortar is massive. So that kind of gives you an idea of the artillery units that the Russians are trying to use, but I'm not really sure as to the range of this thing. So let's pull up the range, and let's see how close this thing would have to be to Severodonetsk to actually cause any damage. So it is a 2S4. 2S4. Let's pull that up, and let's see if we can get the range on this thing. You can also see it in the carry position, where the base plate's clearly visible, and you can see how it's being moved. I actually do not think this is an MTLB chassis anymore. I'm not entirely sure what that is. But let's take a look at the range on this thing, if we can find it. So it uses a 9.4-inch mortar, but where's the range? Let's just type in range. Maybe it'll just give us an answer really quick. Has a range of 9,650 meters using standard high explosives rounds, but a range of 20,000 meters using extended range munition. So with a standard high explosive round, it has an operational range of less than around 7 miles. But with an extended range munition, which I'm sure that the Russians don't have a high number of, it can apparently reach out to 20 kilometers, which would be 20 kilometers to miles. Let me get an exact 12 miles. So the maximum range on this mortar is 12 miles if it was using the best kind of ammunition possible. And so that's giving us an idea that it's not that far from Rubizhny itself. So let's get out a ruler, and from the center of Rubizhny, that thing could be anywhere around here, pretty much. So it could be in Bobrove, it could be in Nufatirka, although that would be a really decent stretch, and it would most likely be hitting the outskirts if it was there. It could be in that village right there. I'm not even going to try and pronounce that. I know I'll butcher that. Or it could be all the way up to Nova Astrakhan. It could be anywhere in those directions, and it could also be backwards in the directions towards Rubizhny. We're not entirely sure, but we do know that 2S4 is operating in the area of Severodonetsk. Here's a picture of that exact same mortar, and it was removed, so we won't be seeing the picture of it. We're now going to move down to our final bit of news from the Severodonetsk area, where we can see a Russian soldiers as a whole in the Severodonetsk area. Once again, let's note the absolute impoverished quality of their equipment. Of course, I have to keep it muted. There is copyrighted music. We can see this guy has no helmet. It looks like he's wearing an older plate. Also, the SVD's an SVD. Can't really rat on that too much. He's got 2 knee pads. He's got knee pads for his groin. What's up with... I guess he's got spare knee pads. I don't know. But this guy generally looks very poorly equipped. It doesn't even look like he may have extra magazines on him. It looks like he has extra bullets, but no magazines. Oh, God. Just imagine the sniper. He fires all the rounds in that magazine. He's then got to sit there for about 2 minutes or 3 minutes just hand reloading that magazine. Oh, Lord. They're poor. And then we can see a soldier behind him. Also, no helmet, just a beanie. He has no bulletproof vest on, just a tunic and some pants. He has no knee pads. He has no equipment beyond the machine gun, and he doesn't even have ammo for the machine gun. And this is giving you an idea, a very good idea, of how poor the Russians actually are, or these pro-Russian forces, because they may be LPR troops. But these guys look dirt poor, rather than the guns they have. So that's giving us a pretty good idea that the Ukrainians are going up against, like, peasant farmers from the medieval ages that have been given pitchforks and been told to go fight, as far as those soldiers are looking. And so let's talk about the situation around this area in general. And this is actually going to tie into Popasna as well, although we haven't gotten to that part of the news yet. The situation around Severodonetsk and Lysychansk is looking a little strenuous right now, and that's being honest. The Russians have pushed the Ukrainians out of Rubizhny, or, you know, as some people may say, the Ukrainians have withdrawn from Rubizhny. But still, that does not put the Ukrainians in a great position. That is starting to give the Russians more land that is adjacent to the Seversky Donets River, which is more area that a possible bridge crossing could be attempted. If a bridge crossing was successful, this yellow area is most likely the area they'll attempt to encircle Severodonetsk with. So with that in mind, an encirclement of Severodonetsk and Lysychansk isn't looking likely right now because they've never attempted a successful bridge crossing and actually be able to keep a foothold on the other side. So right now it's not possible. But considering that they've been able to make progress, and also paired with the pushback in Popasna, and I've heard some information today that the Russians may have been able to push out of Popasna and even go as far as the village of Tripilia. I'm not really sure about that information yet, and of course I'm waiting for more confirmation on that, because that could just be Russian propaganda. I'm not going to listen to it if it is. But if that is the case, that means that the Russians may be reaching the T-1302, which can lead them up towards Lysychansk and then start cutting off Severodonetsk and Lysychansk that way, since that is the only major highway that leads up in that direction where the Ukrainians could get a sizable amount of supplies. If the Russians manage to capture the T-1302 highway, that means that the only highway and the only roadworks that the Ukrainians would be able to supply those defending forces with at that point would be the T-0513, and they would have to go through the country roads near Seversk to reach Severodonetsk and Lysychansk. This could put a massive strain on the logistical forces in that area, and it could start leading to a very difficult defense situation for the Ukrainians. So hopefully the situation down here in Popasna is not as bad as being rumored right now, and if so, the Ukrainians will send reinforcements into this area and push the Russians back into the Popasna city area again, and hopefully make sure that these two highways can stay free of being nearly interdicted by Russian forces, because that will put their logistics into a lurch. With that, we've now reached all of the Kharkiv, Severodonetsk area, and Poltava news in this segment. So we're going to take 3 questions from the chat real quick, and then we're going to return to the Donbas news, the Mariupol news. We don't actually have any more Southern Front news, and then we'll wrap up with a speech from President Zelensky. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so just first up, I want to say thank you everybody for sending in the live chat questions. We have a tremendous amount of really good questions tonight, and I can't wait to get to those after we get done with our super chats, after we get done with the news. So first up on the super chats, we have a $25 donation from TJ Johnson, who says, I'm jealous that I can't have a T-72 around my farm to plant some sunflowers. I'm certain my old Alice Chalmers would pull one out of the mud. I'm looking forward to Sunday's show. I appreciate the effort you all put into this.
Well, I thank you so much for the support, TJ, and of course, it's wonderful to get support and help us to continue to run this channel. And Sunday, by the way, everyone, Sunday is going to be a huge deal. We're going to have Operator Starsky and Ronnie Fit from Funker 530 on at the same time. So, make sure to come and support the fundraiser. This is going to be the last big one we do with a massive fundraising goal. And after this one, we're going to reel them back for a bit so that way everyone doesn't feel pressured to support the fundraiser. Because I've been hearing that some people are feeling pressured, and I don't want that. You know, while we're trying to support Ukraine, I don't want people to put themselves in very tricky situations because they have very big hearts. So I thank you very much for the support. And yes, I'm very happy that you're also looking forward to the Sunday show as well. I'm looking forward to having it. Also, one other thing is that I do believe your tractor could probably pull a T-72 out of the mud. And if it could, the Ukrainians would give it to you tax-free. So I thank you once again for your support. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a super chat from Larry Pickett, who puts in a $20 donation and says, damn good job you're doing. Keep up the great work. Enforcer for president.
Well, I thank you so much for the support. And of course, I will be trying to run for president in 2040. What party am I picking? That will be y'all. That will be for y'all to find out. So, you know, I don't ever weigh in on like politics, but I will definitely be running for president in 2040. Just everyone know that for sure. That's one of my goals in life, is to become the president, and hopefully be an incredibly good one that everyone could be happy with. Although you can't please everyone. So, I thank you very much for the support. I'm glad that you do enjoy this channel. And with that, we're going to move on to the last question of this segment, and then we're going to return to the Donbas and Southern Front news, and then wrap out tonight's news with a speech from President Zelensky.
And the last one of this segment goes to longtime channel supporter BC Skyman, who puts in a $20 donation and says, why is the U.S. refusing to give Ukraine the long-range rocket systems they desperately need to really turn the tide? Congratulations on the Funker interview. Keep up the good work, Enforcer and Enforcer Matt.
Well, I thank you so much for the support. It does help us out a lot. And also, to answer that question, could you reread the first part of that for me real quick?
He says, why is the U.S. refusing to give Ukraine the long-range rocket systems that they need to turn the tide?
I'm not entirely sure why. I believe it may be because we have a small number of those systems. So let me pull that up, and let me see if there is a public number as to how many of these we have. Surprisingly enough, this MLRS system, the M142, actually costs nearly twice as much as a normal Russian main battle tank, which is pretty funny to me. There's only 414 of them, and that may be the reason why we're not willing to hand any of them over. And also, they seem... Let me see. Well, when were they made? Let me go through here. Deployment. Well, what about the development of it? Deployed in the late 1990s and mounted on the standard M1140 frame. So I'm not really sure why. I would have to look more into that because we do know that a lot of countries have been providing artillery systems, and the United States has already provided the M777, so I'm not really sure why they aren't willing to provide the M142. But I do thank you very much for the support. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to look into that situation to see if I can get all of us some answers to see why that's not the case. Well, why that is the case, because that's very interesting to me, considering that we approved a Lend-Lease, which means that we're able to send over, you know, in theory, any kind of equipment that we have. So I thank you very much for the support. I hope that does answer the question, at least in a way, or at least say the ambiguity behind it, because I don't understand why they're not sending over the M142 MLRSs as well. And with that, we've reached the end of this question segment. So we're now going to move on to the Donbas news, the Lazova news, and also the Mariupol news, and then we'll reach President Zelensky's speech, which will be the end of the news for the night. Starting off in the area of Bodarny, we've seen that the Russians have hit a Ukrainian command post today. Honestly, this just looks like a series of houses, but the Russians claim it was a command post. If the Russians were to be believed, which is highly doubtful, a command post being knocked out could, of course, cause a decent amount of disarray in the Ukrainian units that were relying on that command post. We're not entirely sure if it was one, though. We didn't see any military vehicles on the footage. We just saw them slamming into a compound of houses. But it's very important to show because those may have been civilian casualties that the Russians are claiming as a command post being destroyed. We're now going to move on towards the area of Khersk, where today we've seen a BMP-2 get destroyed. This was a Stugna attack, so I hope y'all are happy to see this. And we can see it exploding right there in a fiery ball of flame, and we can also see the turret go for some Delta flight miles. We've seen the Russians trying to get as many flight miles as possible once again throughout the course of this war. I mean, they just can't get enough of them, and I think that the Russians will be overdue for a great vacation, because they've been planting sunflowers all over the country, providing free arms and aid to Ukraine, and one has to give them the maximum amount of support when facing those circumstances. So I hope they get the vacation they deserve, and it looks like those crew members definitely did, and they got it early. So wonderful to see. We're now going to move on into Luhansk itself, where we're now starting to see a little bit of trouble being brewed up by the Luhansk government officials going around and getting ready for a general conscription. This government officer apparently arrived at this house to begin writing down names for conscription, and you can hear that this family has a freak out. So I'm going to let y'all see this video.
Говорите, на каком основании? Приказ, давайте мне, покажите приказ. Покажите мне приказ, что вы имеете право ходить по магазинам. Смотрите в интернете. Не надо, зачем мне интернет? Вы пришли в магазин, частную собственность. Покажите мне документ, что вы имеете право. Девушка, покажите. Покажите мне.
Мы хотим объяснить человеку, чтобы он носил документы свои с собой. Носил с собой бронь, предприятие. А не сидел...
Я возле магазина, возле...
Чего вы здесь сидите? Чего вы здесь ходите, а не воюете?
Мы выполняем свой долг.
Какой долг? Девушка, вы мне обещали показать.
А я без документов вышел. Вышел за хлебушком. Да. Сейчас вот.
Алло, здравствуйте.
Документа нету никакого, да? Что можно ходить по магазинам. Я так понимаю, да? Нету?
Конечно,
нету. Вы о чем мне не показали? Ну, что мне не показали документ?
Кто вы?
В смысле, кто вы? А кто вы? Ну, кто вы?
Что должен предоставить вам документы?
А чё нет? Я такой же гражданин Украины или Донбасса, не знаю, кто сейчас. И где сейчас?
Мы тоже, вот мы сейчас встречаем людей, у которых на руках все документы. Сейчас идет военное положение.
Которого никто не объявлял. Конкретно. Нет указа, что было бы военное объявление, Лариса.
Да, никто никого не призывал, никто нигде не воюет.
Я еще раз вам говорю, что официально нигде не объявлено военное положение. Нигде.
У нас нет военной операции, да, не
Если сейчас
происходит.
позвонит, я хочу просто уточнить.
Девушка, так у вас нету, да, документа такого?
В данный момент нет.
А, так вы же пошли, что ж мне хотели показать его.
Документ свой, где я
Нет,
работаю.
мне не надо делать документ, где вы работаете. Вы мне сказали, что вы пойдете возьмете документ о... Да при чем здесь интернет? Может, у меня интернета нет?
Ну, хорошо.
Ну, интернет это как бы еще.
Представьтесь, пожалуйста, девушка, еще раз.
Я на камеру представляю.
Представьтесь, а почему нет?
Почему?
Почему? Покажите свое удостоверение.
Пожалуйста, показываю. Все?
Да.
So we can see here, this woman in particular is having a massive problem with government officials coming around in the LPR for the general conscription notice. It appears that they were carrying a clipboard with them, which is an archaic way of collecting information, I guess you could say at this point, but then again, the LPR is Russian aligned, so they don't really get a lot of technology. But still, at the same time, it does look like she's going around trying to collect names for general conscription, and it appears that this lady is having none of it. So it appears that they got into a little bit of a row. And for some of y'all who may not know, conscription in Russian-aligned countries is incredibly normal. It's very normal for people, once out of high school, to go and have to serve a mandatory 1 year of service in Russia, anywhere in between the ages of 18 and 35. So they have this window where they can go and apply for their 1 year of service, but before they turn 35, they have to have served at least 1 year in the Russian military. So it's a very interesting thing. We can see the LPR going around and apparently trying to get more bodies to fling at the Ukrainians and end up being fertilizer for sunflowers. So very interesting video, and it's showing that apparently there's a decent amount of unhappiness, at least in that one video, of their of the officials coming around and trying to conscript probably what is this woman's child. With that, we're now going to move on to the next bit of news we've gotten in the Luhansk area, showing a Russian convoy moving into the moving through the Donbas. It says that this convoy is headed to the Donbas, but I believe that it's already in the Donbas. I think the caption may just be a little incorrect. Here we see Russian tanks on the other side of the highway, and also Russian armored personnel carriers. Most of these tanks appear to be T-72B3s. And now we can see some logistics vehicles following up the convoy. That's the end of the video, but you can see that a sizable convoy there is moving through the Donbas. We don't know where they're heading or where exactly they are, but once again, it is something to report, as it is showing Russian troop movements somewhere in the country. We're now going to start moving towards outside of the Donbas for a second. We're now going to move to the area of Lozova, where we saw the Russians once again commit a very clear and obvious example of a war crime and also an act of terrorism on the Ukrainian public. Early in the morning, we saw a cruise missile hit the Palace of Culture in the town of Lozova. This large brown building here, and it actually happened incredibly suddenly in this video, this large brown video here is a Palace of Culture. For those of y'all who are in the United States like me, who may have no idea what a Palace of Culture actually is, I did a decent amount of research, and the best thing I could compare this to is a civic center here in the United States. And so, the Palace of Culture, much like a civic center, is where a lot of functions in the town occur. There's large auditoriums in there, and it's also where a lot of clubs can meet. So if you have like a club in your town, it will end up in the Palace of Culture, kind of like how events occur at civic centers here in the United States. It's a really interesting name, honestly. The Palace of Culture sounds a lot like, you know, you would put a lot of historic exhibits in there or something like that. I had a really high regard for the Palace of Culture. I was like, ooh, wow, Palace of Culture, that sounds so cool. And then I found out it's really just a civic center. But anyways, we can see here that a cruise missile hit the Palace of Culture dead on. We're not really sure if anyone was killed in this explosion. That's not entirely certain to us, but it did cause irreparable damage to this building. So you can see the smoke is still billowing out of the building after the missile strike. And you can tell already that there's already been a sizable amount of damage to the Palace of Culture. We also have some follow-up pictures from the damage of this missile strike, and we can clearly see these here. You can see that the missile destroyed most of the front facade of the building, as well as the large structure that was jutting upwards from it. We can see here one of the auditoriums inside the building, and you can see that it has also suffered a large deal of damage, and it appears to be the auditorium that was directly below the explosion of this cruise missile. And this next picture, we can once again see more damage in this Palace of Culture. And what's very interesting to me is I was very surprised to see how modern the interior of this building looked. This was very surprising to me, considering that palaces of culture are largely a Soviet-era thing, and it appears that this one may have been pretty new based off of the interior design, or it may have been refurbished at some point to have a more modern look to it. Or this may have just been the aesthetic at the time it was made. I'm not entirely sure, but it was surprisingly modern to me. And I hate to know that a civilian structure that has an entirely civilian purpose to it, much like this building, has been hit and destroyed by the Russians once more. There was absolutely no point in destroying this building. In the video evidence we saw, there were no Ukrainian military units in the vicinity, so they pretty much attacked another instance of civilian infrastructure with absolutely no reason, and I believe that this is most certainly a war crime and also an act of terrorism on the Ukrainian public as they try and throw them into general disarray and panic. Here we're going to pull up Lozova on Google Maps, and we're actually going to take a good look at the inside of this Palace of Culture and take a look at what it looked like before this happened. Let me make sure that the Palace of Culture is around here somewhere. It is the city of Lozova, and so we're trying to find the park this thing was at. Let's see, there's the Lozova City Council. What's this here? I think that this... No, I don't think this is the Palace of Culture. This is not the Palace of Culture. Nice place, though, but not the Palace of Culture. Let's go on a little search for it. It's got a park near it. We know that. Is this it? Nope, that's a school. Oh, gee, I want to find this thing because I want to know what it looked like before it got destroyed. They have a pretty nice train station. That's one thing for certain. The city, I feel like it would be around here. I think this is it. Yeah, this is it, maybe. No, that's not it. I'm just going to pull it up. Lozova Palace of Culture. Maybe that'll pull that up on Google Maps for us. Wait a minute, no, let's just type it in here. Palace of Culture. Lozova. Let's see, so... Let's find Lozova. Okay, apparently it's not going to show me the one here. Oh, man. That pisses me off, man, because I was trying to find the thing, actually. And now I can't find it. And it was a very distinctive building. It's not... It can't be hiding in plain sight, but it is. That's annoying. Unfortunately, I won't be able to show y'all exactly what that Palace of Culture looks like before the missile struck, but you can get the idea that that building has been damaged to the point that it'll have to go through massive rebuilding effort after the war or during the war, or it'll have to be completely demolished and rebuilt. Once again, an act of terrorism and a war crime against the Ukrainians, and that is something I hope that the Ukrainians will hold the Russians who committed that attack accountable for if they can. We're now going to move back into the area of the Donbas, where near Avdiivka today, we've seen incendiary rounds being used once again by the Russians, this time in an area with civilian buildings. Here you can see the phosphorus raining down on the trenches right outside of the civilian area, and you can also see that the phosphorus rounds actually landed on what appears to be a commie block over there in the distance.
КТД-90 мы используем для снарядов 9М22С зажигательные.
If they're not able to confirm that there were no civilians in that area, it was a war crime. And so there we can see again Russians playing a pretty tricky game of roulette, trying to shoot, I guess you could call it incendiary rounds at the infantry, and hoping or not really caring that there's any civilians around. And once again, being rather immoral because we haven't seen incendiary rounds be used for some while. Well, we've seen them used here and there, of course, through all conflicts recently, but not to the degree that the Russians are beginning to use them, which is starting to enter the levels of Vietnam era usage of napalm. We're now going to move down from the Donbas area and into Mariupol itself, and we've gotten a large amount of news from this area today. And we actually got another report from the commander of the Azov. This time he's come on film, and he is, excuse me, looking slightly wounded. We can see some bandages on his right arm. And he gave a report today which did confirm, and I want everyone to know this did confirm that the Ukrainian government did tell them to surrender. He says this during his address here. Here's the video.
Слава Україні! 86 днів оборони Маріуполя. Вище військове керівництво дало наказ про збереження життя та здоров'я військовослужбовців гарнізону та припинення оборони міста. Попри важкі бої, кругову оборону та відсутність постачання.
And I'd like to go back to this part right here. Let's listen to that. So, the highest, and I'm just going to read it out here. The highest-ranking leadership issued a decree to preserve the lives and health of the garrison's military and stopping the defense of the city. What he said right there, and people have been trying to play word games with it, the Ukrainian government told him to preserve the lives of your men, stop the defense of the city, which means they surrender. That's what he said. And so I want to make it clear that while it doesn't sound good in actual terminology, this unit has kind of gone rogue, at least on the official declarations and statements by the Ukrainian government. Because the Ukrainians have told them to surrender, and this unit has refused to surrender and follow their orders. And so they have really lost the protection of the Ukrainian government because now they're operating outside of its control. So with that, here's the rest of the video and the speech.
Бої, кругову оборону та відсутність постачання ми постійно наголошували на трьох найважливіших для нас умовах, а саме цивільні, поранені та загиблі. Цивільних вдалося евакуювати. Важко поранені отримали необхідну допомогу, та їх вдалося евакуювати з подальшим обміном та доставкою на територію підконтрольну Україні. Щодо загиблих героїв, процес триває, та надіюсь, найближчим часом рідні та вся Україна зможе з почестями поховати своїх воїнів. Слава Україні!
With the end of that speech, I of course do have to make the note that while they, in my opinion, are operating out of the scope of the Ukrainian government's commands now, and that does make them technically a rogue unit, I do wish them the best of luck in their defense, and I hope that they can hold the Azovstal for a long time. This unit has a large amount of fears, and well-placed fears, that the Russians will not treat them well if they surrender and are captured. If they are surrendered and captured, and they are captured or destroyed in their entirety, that means that the prisoners that are taken by the Russians may be kept in Russia in perpetuity and may never return to Ukraine, or they may be turned into examples and maybe even face death. So I understand why they are still in there and refusing to surrender, but at the same time, the actual situation that they put themselves in is incredibly tricky. So I hope the best occurs for them. And today we've gotten more evidence showing that the fighting is still occurring in the Azovstal to a serious degree. Here in this video, we can see some explosions occurring over the side of a railroad track. Well, actually, this is the other bit of footage. Here we can actually see the Russians within the Azovstal plant now. This is the Azovstal. And over here in this area, which kind of looks like a large sewer grate, the Russians claim that this is one of the Azov hideouts inside of the plant. And so they're trying to light the thing up and, you know, of course, wound or kill the Azov defenders within that dugout or force them out to surrender.
Пидорас!
Попал! So we can still see that the fighting is continuing as far as the early midday as of today, as they were still attempting to try and clear out the Azovstal, the Russians. We can then see another clip of footage from a battle inside of the Azovstal, where across some railroad tracks, we can see a large amount of explosions and firefights occurring in between the Russians and the remaining Azov defenders. Of course, it's going into slideshow mode here, unfortunately. But you could hear a heavy firefight raging on over there on the other side. Then finally, the last bit of news we've gotten from Mariupol today are these photos from inside of the Azovstal plant itself. Here we can see a soldier standing amongst what I can't really identify. I'm not really sure what that is, but we can see that in this picture and the next, there are still soldiers within the Azovstal plant, and they are still offering some level of resistance. Hopefully they'll be able to hold and manage to live off of the supplies they have, although the situation is getting more difficult for them by the day, as in those last two videos we can clearly see that the Russians have now surely entered the Azovstal plant perimeter, and they are going to be there for the rest of the siege, most likely. Now considering that several hundred of the defenders at least have surrendered, and their actual fighting power has been decreased by that much, which is a sizable amount for their force size. So hopefully they can manage to hold, and hopefully they never fall into the hands of the Russians, because we're not really sure what the Russians are going to do to them. And that's entirely true. Once the first few hundred surrendered on May 16th, the Russians were already talking about doing heinous things to them that would violate the agreement that they made with the Ukrainians. So once again, I wish them the best of luck. I don't know how much longer they're going to be able to hold out. It appears that the remainder of the Azov that is left in that plant is going to fight to the death. Of course, that is very unfortunate to think about, that they're most likely not going to make it out alive, but then again, they are going to sit there and once again continue their mission that they originally set out with, and that is to fight for every last inch of Mariupol and make the Russians pay for any gains they get. Once again, another thing that I think is important to the Azov is that they clearly stated very early on in the war that they would never surrender. And that's something I believe that the commander and co-commander of the Azovstal, the Azov battalion that is in Mariupol, is still trying to carry through on. So I believe that's why, while some few hundred of the Azov surrendered the other day, several hundred of them are still in there, and they're still going to defend until the last bullet and the last man, just because they said that at the beginning of the war, and they're not going to look like they're going back on their promise and making a large propaganda coup for the Russians, and also a large loss of morale for the Ukrainians. So they are providing some kind of resistance in there still, but we're not really sure by how much. So with that, we've now actually covered all of the news for today. We're now going to move on to the speech from President Zelensky, and then after that, we're going to move into the question segment. And so, here is the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky on day 86.
Українці і українки. Наші захисники, наші захисниці, але також і наші партнери у світі. Сьогодні мої звернення ширше, ніж зазвичай, і присвячено це звернення предмету, над яким будемо працювати разом найближчим часом, а саме компенсації. Компенсацію усіх тих збитків, які Росія своєю агресією нанесла Україні. Погляньте, будь ласка, як минув сьогоднішній день. Ракетний удар російської армії по Харківщині. В місті Лозова окупанти знищили будинок культури. Звичайно, Росія зробила вже все можливе, щоб на її території не залишило жодного місця культури. Але до чого тут наша Харківщина? Хай би себе в Росії і підривали. Підривали те, що у них залишилось від будинків культури, якщо їм хочеться. Окупанти вдарили також по Одеській області, по Полтавщині, по Житомирщині. Продовжують спробу наступу на Донбасі. Вони знищили у попіл Рубіжне, Волноваху, як і Маріуполь. Намагаються зробити те саме з Сєвєродонецька та багатьма іншими містами. Вони роблять все, щоб витравити будь-яке нормальне життя на Херсонщині, в тих районах Запорізької області, куди вони зайшли. Усе це і багато іншого, що російська армія зробила за час 24 лютого і з 2014 року, потребує справедливої відповіді. По-перше, це звільнення. Ми маємо битись, поки не очистимо нашу землю від окупантів і поки не гарантуємо Україну безпеку. По-друге, це притягнення до відповідальності усіх російських воєнних злочинців і в українських судах, і в міжнародному трибуналі, і просто на полі бою, поки війна триває. Але по-третє, ми працюємо і над тим, щоб Росія так чи інакше компенсувала усе, що вона знищила в Україні. Кожен спалений дім, кожну зруйновану школу, зруйновану лікарню, кожен підірваний будинок культури і об'єкт інфраструктури, кожне знищене підприємство, кожен зупинений бізнес, кожну втрачену гривню людьми, підприємствами, громадами, державою. Російські гроші у якості компенсації мають дійти до кожної людини, кожної родини, бізнесу, які постраждали. Звісно, російська держава не визнає навіть того, що вона є агресором, але її визнання і не потрібно. Ми пропонуємо державам-партнерам у законний спосіб визнати те, що Росія повинна понести матеріальну відповідальність за скоєні нею злочини. Це важливо не тільки в контексті цієї війни, розв'язаної Росією, але й в контексті будь-яких інших агресивних дій, чи то Росії, чи то будь-якого іншого потенційного агресора. Зло має знайти відповідь, знати, що буде покарано. Отже, ми пропонуємо державам-партнерам підписати багатосторонні договори, створити механізм, завдяки якому кожен, хто постраждав від дій Росії, зможе отримати компенсацію всіх втрат. На основі такого договору російські кошти і майно, які знаходяться в юрисдикціях держав-партнерів, мають бути арештовані або заморожені, а потім конфісковані і направлені у спеціально створений фонд, з якого усі, хто постраждав від російської агресії, зможуть отримати відповідну компенсацію. Це буде точно справедливо, і Росія відчує справжню вагу кожної ракети, кожної бомби, кожного снаряду, які вона випустила по нам. Ми пропонуємо нашим партнерам стати засновниками такого фонду, а також учасниками спеціальної міжнародної комісії, яка розглядає позови, тобто звернення як фізичних, так і юридичних осіб. Зрозуміло, що виконання цього завдання не буде простим, але насправді вже почалась дискусія про необхідність такого шляху, такої компенсації за рахунок російських активів. Світ вже про це говорить. Тож маємо зробити і починаємо такий спеціальний діалог з нашими партнерами, щоб агресор відчував, що війна здатна нанести максимальні збитки не комусь іншому, а саме тому, хто пішов з нею до сусіда. Світ побачив, що існуючі міжнародні організації та інструменти не можуть справитися з усіма викликами, тому треба не просто використовувати ті можливості, які вже існують, але й пропонувати нові. Це буде дієво. Говорив сьогодні про відповідальність Росії за цю війну із представниками Ірландії, які відвідали Україну. Голови обох палат ірландського парламенту були в столиці, провели з ними дуже змістовні переговори. І ще одне, обов'язково сьогодні хочу подякувати нашим людям, які не припиняють боротися з окупацією, особливо тим, хто зараз на території, яка тимчасово під контролем Росії, її армії. Зокрема, рятувальники в Енергодарі, які вийшли сьогодні на протест, заслуговують підтримки від усіх нас. Дякую вам. Кожен і кожна мають показувати, що в окупантів немає жодного права щось вирішувати на нашій землі. Це важливий компонент нашої перемоги. Підписав сьогодні черговий указ про нагородження наших захисників. 202 військовослужбовця Збройних сил України відзначені державними нагородами. Загалом за час повномасштабної війни вже більше 14 тисяч наших захисників і захисниць були нагороджені за хоробрість та ефективність в обороні країни і в допомозі нашим людям. Вічна слава усім, хто став на захист держави, вічна пам'ять кожному і кожній, хто віддав життя за Україну. Слава Україні! Напевно, останнє. Сьогодні 3 роки, як я став президентом України. Дякую за довіру. Пишаюсь тим, що я президент. Люблю вас. Не підведу. Слава Україні!
And with that, that was the end of the speech from President Zelensky today. He ended it with a nice little note about him being president for 3 years on that very day, and he once again tried to affirm the public, please have trust in me, I'm not going to let you all down, which is, of course, an incredible statement from him, considering that he hasn't let them down yet, considering that he wasn't given an offer to get out of the country within the first week of the war, and he turned it down. So I have to say, I think that the whole entire nation of Ukraine at this point believes that this man will never let them down because he's been with them through thick and thin at this point. With that, that is the end of Zelensky's speech, and that signals the end of today's news. Once again, thank you all so much for watching. If you did enjoy this video and you're new to the channel, the video's not done yet, by the way, but if y'all would, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Of course, if you subscribe, you will be privy to knowing when the stream runs, which is every single day of the week at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, except for Mondays. That's the day we take off. We also upload daily summaries at this point every single day of the week, except for days where I'm out filming because I can't upload one then. I hope y'all have enjoyed this stream and the news so far, and if y'all would like to hang around, we are of course going to get right into the question segment, answer all of the live chats, all of the not all of the live chats, all of the super chats, and then as many live chats as we can. And so, with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and it is now time for my most favorite time of the stream, which is the questions. But before we move on, I just want to say that we do have about 20 minutes left until that limited edition run gets taken off the Teespring store permanently. So go check it out if you want to. And with that, we are moving on to our first super chat. First up, we have a $21 donation from 3 Michael, who says, Seinfeld was a brilliant show with a kind of mediocre final episode. Have you watched the first few seasons of Archer or Rick and Morty? They're awesome as well.
I do have to agree that Seinfeld is an incredibly good sitcom. I think it was actually one of the best ones made, to be honest. One thing I do have to say is that I have tried to watch The Office. Before I answer like your question all the way, I have watched The Office, and honestly, not really a big fan of The Office. Moving on to Rick and Morty, yes, I have seen it, but I feel at this point, the original 2 seasons were all original, pretty good, and then honestly, they started to devolve into things that were kind of cliche, a little bit too cliche for me to enjoy, really, because it started to play into itself too much, and I'm not really one for that. I felt like Seinfeld always was approaching with original content, and that's one thing I love, is when originality is the key in a show. Like, they never did the same thing twice in Seinfeld unless it was some kind of running joke, like that guy, you know, who kept on beating up Kramer, you know, who like got the armoire, and he's like, I like the armoire, so I'm gonna take the armoire. Like, that was a recurring joke, but it was a good one. And you know, but beyond that, it was all original, and I like that. I haven't seen Archer though, so unfortunately I can't comment on that one all too much. And also one other show that I've watched a little bit is Family Guy, and I've got to be honest with everyone, I'm not a big fan of Family Guy at all. It's just so, I don't know what's up with it, but it's not good. I don't know why. It's just not good comedy, and honestly, based off of that, and based off of all of the comedy shows Seth MacFarlane has done, I would have to say that he's like a lower tier comedian, really. And I'm just not really a big fan of any of the work he does. All of his jokes are always the same, and he's been doing them for around 20 years at this point. And once you hear the same joke for 20 years in a row, they just kind of get old. But beyond that, I hope I have answered the question. That kind of gives you an idea of what I like, you know, as far as TV shows. And I just saw someone say, Robert Gandera said, never liked Seinfeld, never found it to be funny. Well, looks like that message is going to get lost in the mail. But anyways, I thank you very much for the support. I hope that does address the question. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And next up, we have a $36 donation from Anthony Dobson, who's a longtime channel supporter, who says, Enforcer, do you prefer your BLTs with mayonnaise or malayutkas? Great job, guys. I just ordered the Mr. Lunchtime t-shirt. Great design, Enforcer Matt, and keep up the superb coverage. And thank you, Anthony. Like I've said before, I had a lot of fun making that design. Me and the Enforcer sort of sat down and collaborated on it and came up with it. But yeah, pretty cool shirts. And thank you for ordering one.
Yes, and I do thank you very much for ordering one as well. Of course, it helps out our channel a huge degree. And I'd also like to answer your question there real quick. So if you could reread that for me, Matthew, just so that way I can answer it, I'd be very appreciative.
His main question was, do you prefer your BLTs with mayonnaise or malayutkas?
I believe I like my BLTs with mayonnaise. I think that's one of the only ways I've eaten it. I've never had malayutkas, but I'll have to try that now that you brought that up, because I've never known that was an option. So I thank you very much for the support, and I hope that does answer the question. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one. Oh, wait a minute. Before
All
we
right.
do, I just saw someone in the chat say, Kyle B said, Barry on HBO is worth checking out. I just remembered that one, and I actually did watch that one, and that is incredibly good. It's about a hitman, and I believe that the role is played, oh my god, I forgot his name. But I believe he's actually a really good comedian. I like his style. He's got some pretty good jokes. But he used to be on Saturday Night Live. I think that was the place where most people know him from. But he's the main character in a show where he's a hitman, and he's trying to not be a hitman, but he's still a hitman. And it's a hilarious show. I highly recommend y'all go check that one out. It's great. And so, with that, we're on to the next question.
And I have to say, Enforcer, just to sort of come to the defense of Seth MacFarlane a little bit, you have to give him credit for his voiceover skills because he voices basically every character in the show. So you have to give him credit for that at least.
That's true. Yeah, he does all the characters. He has a very wide range. And then I just saw some. I don't know why. I just saw someone say, where was it? Let me look through this. Someone said something about if you don't like his humor, you're a certain political alignment. What in the world does liking someone's humor have to do with a political alignment? That's like saying, I don't like tomatoes. Well, if you don't like tomatoes, that means you must be a commie. It's like, how in the world do you draw that assumption? I found that one funny. I had to address that because I was like, what? But no, I just don't like his comedy. It just doesn't jive with me. And I mean, people out there like his comedy. That's obviously why it's out there on TV. But I'm for some reason, it just doesn't really jive with me. That's just my opinion on it. But I do thank you very much for bringing that up so I could address that and wonder why in the world people have always got to try and align political beliefs with with opinions. I don't know how they're really correlating, but anyways, with that, we're on to the next one.
And moving on, we have a $20 donation from Arlie John, who says, "This is a shot of tequila for each of you."
Well, thank you very much for the support, and we will make sure to get plastered on your dime. So thank you so much for supporting the channel. I actually don't drink, but I will see about picking up that habit since so many people want me to. So thank you very much once again. And with that, we're moving on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Nolan Hermanson, who says, "Slava Ukraine, the video of an Azov Steel defender said they had a different directive and not to speculate, and that negotiation is staged. Do you feel there's any chance they are given green passage at a further date?"
I don't know. I mean, right now, the Russians look like they're trying to go in there and exterminate them based off of the footage we were getting today. I don't think that's the case. I mean, there's always the question of are things more complicated than what they seem on the surface, and most of the time it's almost always the answer that it's not. There's a common phrase in the medical world that when you hear the clop of hooves, think horses, not zebras, and what's meant behind that is think of something normal instead of something really extraordinary or rare. So I'm always thinking in the simplistic terms and the straightforward terms, which usually turn out to be correct because it's the most normal thing that can happen. Like if you hear a car revving, most likely some kind of average car. You're not going to round the corner and always see a Ferrari. So in terms of that, I think the simple answer to that, and this is the one I'm kind of going to stick with for now, and of course I could be wrong. There's always the chance I can be wrong whenever I say these things, but I think the Azov is refusing to surrender because they do not trust the Russians, and they're going to continue to fight on just because that's what they said, and they're just going to uphold what they say. So I think that's really honestly the breakdown of why they're refusing to surrender, because even the commander of the Azov has given the statement now on video, as everyone saw tonight, saying that the Ukrainian government told him to save the lives of his men by stopping the fighting and surrendering. That's what he said. So I thank you very much for the support, but that's kind of my opinion on it. But maybe that may be something they think about or talk about in the future, although I don't think that will be a possibility in my opinion. But I do thank you very much for the support. Once again, take what I say with a grain of salt on stuff like that, because everyone has their opinions, and of course mine could be wrong on that. And so with that, we're on to the next question.
And up next, we have a super chat from a channel regular, Chris Mack, who puts in a $20 donation and says, "I haven't seen any recent coffee fund contributions recently, so please use this to refill the cupboard. Slava Ukraine."
Hey, well, I thank you very much for the support, and it's always wonderful to hear that we will have coffee flowing in. For some reason, coffee just doesn't really work for me anymore. I think I may start dropping drinking coffee. I don't know. I don't take that solid and run with it yet. I might not. But at the same time, coffee's not really doing much for me anymore. So thank you very much for the support. I still drink coffee nonetheless. It's something that I still do in hopes of it doing something. But I feel like coffee's starting to wear off its effects on me, and I'm not really getting much out of it. So with that, once again, I thank you so much for the support. We will get some coffee with it. And with that being said, we're on to the next question.
And up next, we have a super chat from S. Moore, who puts in a $15 donation and says, after Meredith's untimely passing, the Salmon Nation convened 7, appointed Sylvia's granddaughter of the same name as Spokes Salmon. She comments, Belarus has blood on their hands, Lukashenko.
That is true. I thank you very much for the support. And we have seen the Belarusians appear to have created a real-life, fully operational ghost army. While it's not using, inflatable tanks or anything, they've moved enough troops to the border that the Ukrainians now have built up a force on the border as well, just in case if the Belarusians were to join the war. And so it appears that the Belarusians are passively trying to help the Russians in their southeastern offensive by tying up Ukrainian units in the north. So I thank you very much for the support, and I do have to agree in that regard. Lukashenko certainly does have blood on his hands, and he's no innocent party either. Although we've seen him waffling a little bit here and there, he goes all the way to praising the Ukrainians and their Western military doctrines, to condemning the Ukrainians and the West, and then saying the Russians and all of the CSTO members need to align and rally. So I thank you very much for the support, and I hope that does address the comment in a pretty good way. And before we move on, I just saw someone in the live chat say, Faulty Towers. And Matthew, did you watch Faulty Towers?
Yes, that was a very good show with John Cleese in it.
Yeah, that was an incredible one. And I thank you so much for bringing that one up, because that one, honestly, blew it out of the park in every regard. I fell out laughing every single time I watched Faulty Towers, and I watched that show 3 or 4 times over. And I remember that one episode where the rat was running around the hotel. I think it was the last episode in the season, and the old man had this shotgun and was unloading it in the bar at this rat as it was running around. It was hilarious. I mean, like, everything that Faulty Towers did was hilarious, and the Monty Python crew was really ahead of their time. I would say that they created the shit post, and I'm sorry for my language there. I know I don't cuss a lot, and I want to make sure everyone knows that that's not going to become a recurring thing. But I think Monty Python was the original creator of the shit post before the internet was really a thing, and you could do that sort of stuff. But it's the fish thing, like when he pulled out the little fish and he slapped the guy in the face, and then the guy pulled out like the trout and he smacked him across the face. I mean, like it was hilarious for no reason too. It's just random, but it was hilarious. And I got to say, their comedy was really good, and also my whole entire reenacting group are huge Monty Python fans, and I have to say, I think my favorite of the Monty Python group was certainly John Cleese. Now, those are some actors I know, and John Cleese is definitely my favorite, and I think that his work carried over incredibly well in his own style in Faulty Towers, and I loved it a lot. So I hope that addresses the question. Oh yeah, Manuel! I just saw Mr. Jim say Manuel. Manuel was hilarious as well. The whole entire crew on Faulty Towers was hilarious. Every single one of them, man. There was just some funny stuff they said. So with that, we're going to move on to the next question, but I thank you so much for bringing that one up, because that one was a great comedy show as well.
Okay, so up next we have a whopping $100 donation from Steve2848, who says, summer is coming, keep the channel up and the AC on.
Well, I thank you so much for the support, Steve. That kind of support does help this channel to keep running, and it will certainly help us to look forward into the future and also keep these streams running in the now. So I thank you once again so much for the support, Steve. You've been helping out this channel a pretty decent bit, and folks like you make sure to keep the lights on here, food in our stomachs, and also be able to allow me to sit down and work on this 12 hours a day. And I want to clear this up, because I actually had someone come through in my comment section and say some stuff about the super chats, and they actually were saying it in a misinformed way. They hadn't been around the channel for a long time. They were a new viewer, and so they didn't know how this works. For those of y'all who don't know, and are maybe new here and are just watching it right now, I spend 12 hours a day. This is a daily job for me. 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, working on this stream and also the summary videos in the middle of the day. And so this takes up so much time that I do not have the chance to ever look into getting another job. And so I have to be able to support myself off of this stream like it's a job. So I, of course, have to make some kind of revenue off of it to survive, because if this was being run for free, I would start going hungry, and I would have to go out and get a job. So I have to make sure that I'm able to support myself and keep this thing running. And so super chats help me to do that. And so just for everyone who's here that's new and may have never seen this and are wondering why I'm taking so many super chats in and answering so many questions, that's the reason why, is because I have to be able to support myself to keep the stream running, while the main goal right now is still to support Ukraine. And we have managed to raise over $250,000 in their support, just for everyone to know. So with that, we're going to move on to the next question. And I thank you so much once again, Steve, for the massive amount of support you've given us.
And next up, we have a $50 donation from John Boyer. Thank you very much, John, for your continued support. He says, can the Ukrainian 777s by any chance reach and hit Russian rail support at this point? Separate question, might the Russian AWACS be getting jammed by mysterious support? Enforcer and Enforcer Matt are the bomb. Slava Ukraine.
Well, thank you so much for the support, and I'm glad to know that you think we are the bomb. It's always wonderful to know that a lot of people think we're a very good stream, and I try and make sure that my delivery of the news is competent, maybe a little bit witty, but altogether well put, although I'm doing this on the fly. So I thank you very much once again for the support. And to answer that question, the M777 may be able to reach Russian railheads, but that is a matter of how close are the railheads to the front. For the large part, I think the railheads stop where the last railhead is available inside of Russia. That may be different in the DPR and LPR for sure, considering the Russians pretty much started off with that being Russian territory. But in the areas east of Kharkiv, I believe the Ukrainians were able to destroy most of the railroad bridges and rails themselves in this area. So I'm not really sure if the Russians have been able to repair that and start using railheads near the front lines. But as of the moment, I believe most of the supplies here on this eastern northern area is being brought in by truck. We do know that the railroads are intact near Melitopol, considering that an armored train was destroyed in the area recently. So that does tell us that railroad operations are possible coming up from Crimea and into Ukraine itself. So the answer is a little bit different in areas about how close the railheads get to the front lines. But here at Melitopol, if an artillery piece that was an M777, well, let's pull up the range. M777 range. 13 miles with the M107 round, and up to 25 miles with the Excalibur. So unfortunately, even at Melitopol, which I think would be the closest a railhead ever got anywhere on the front lines throughout the country, it looks like the M777 would actually be out of range there. So I hope that answers the question the best I can based off of the knowledge we're able to get and some pretty reasonable assumptions that are based in logic. So thank you very much for the support. I hope that does answer the question the best I can. And the answer is it appears not. It appears that most of the railheads are out of range. And so with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And for anybody that might be wondering, we do have your super chats in the spreadsheet. So if we haven't called it out yet, we are going to get to it very soon. So up next, we have an $11 donation from Abacus, who says, considering the Putin's Tsar/USSR ambitions and current Ukraine invasion, how do you value past West intelligence and actions? The warning signals must have been there for quite a long time.
The warning signals were not there for an incredibly long time. When Putin came to power, he was actually considered very Western, pro-Western as a matter of fact. And a lot of the Western world looked on at Putin and was like, wow, this guy's going to bring Russia over to our side. And then as time went on, Putin started to do the opposite. And so it wasn't foreseen for a very long time. You know, it was a slow drift over to the radical direction that the Russians have taken now, as in trying to pretty much recreate the Russian Empire in a way. And we know that that's what they're trying to do, because they're trying to retake parts of Poland, at least in their larger plan, which they'll never succeed in. But still, the point stands that it isn't looking like the warning signs were here for all too long. And I think, I'm not really sure about, could you kind of give me a layout on what you're thinking about that Western information he's talking about, Matthew?
Let's see, he's talking about the Ukraine invasion, the past West intelligence and actions. He's basically asking you, do you put any stock in our intelligence agencies and their analysis of what's going on over there in Ukraine and what was going to happen eventually, which was the invasion?
I would put stock into them saying well in advance, months in advance, that an invasion was going to occur because there were large buildups of forces all around the Ukrainian border. I do believe in that. But the validity of the intelligence agencies here in the United States and their effectiveness overall is questionable. If you look back in time, for example, into the invasion of Iraq, they stated clearly that yellow cake uranium was in the possession of the Iraqis. And that's the whole reason we invaded, at least officially. And going off of that, that was obviously a flat-out lie, because we didn't find any yellow cake uranium throughout all of Iraq. So that's something that kind of throws it into question. And also, there's kind of a bit of a shady history with the CIA in particular, was what they've done around the world. You know, like, for example, overthrowing governments in Central and South America, kind of dabbling into syphilis experiments on, of course, the population in Tuskegee, Alabama, which isn't far from where I live. And they've had a very questionable history by and large. And so while they were right this time, I always look at the intelligence agencies here in the United States like kind of a watered down, weaker version of the FSB or the KGB in terms of what they're able to do. And they kind of operate almost independently from the government in some ways and just do what they want. So while they were correct here, and I believe the information was crucial and important, it is very important to note that they kind of have a very shady and questionable background. And the FBI has as well, especially under the J. Edgar Hoover era, where Hoover pretty much would blackmail the sitting presidents, and he kind of was able to gain some political sway through that, which is a very interesting story. And I highly suggest y'all look through the Edgar Hoover period of the FBI, because it was an incredibly interesting time. And that's why Edgar Hoover was the longest serving director in FBI history, is because he was able to pretty much blackmail every single politician into ensuring that he would stay in that position until the end of time, pretty much. So with that, I hope that kind of answers the question, and we're going to move on to the next one.
And next up, we have a $10 super chat from DJ Bonebreaker, who says, I think the reason why everyone, including Western analysts, underestimated how well Ukraine would do in this war was because they forgot that Ukraine is basically the Texas of Europe. Slava Ukraine.
Slava Ukraine. I do have to agree. That's a very great analysis. If one was to culturally align the Cossacks with an American culture, because there's a lot of cultures that are different from state to state. New Yorkers are different from Alabamians. Texans are different from Alabamians. Every single state has a slightly different identity here in the United States. And I would have to agree, historically, Cossacks are really similar to the Cowboys. And what's wild to me, and this is always crazy to me to think about, is that samurais, cowboys, and Cossacks all existed within the same historical time period. And so while you had samurai, and let's pull up samurai. While you had samurai dressed like this in Japan in the 1860s, you had cowboys dressed like, nope, not that cowboy, Wild West cowboys, and hopefully it doesn't pull up anything weird. Wild West cowboys images. You had cowboys like this here in the United States, and then you had Cossacks in Ukraine that looked like these. These are the Zaporizhian Cossacks, which were one of the most powerful Cossack groups in Ukraine. And it's so weird to think that just not too long ago in the world's history, you had these people who looked entirely different from cowboys, which look entirely different from samurai, and you had all this going on at the same time. It's a really weird history. It's really interesting and weird to me that this was the case. And what was so cool, and this is going way off on a tangent, I'm sorry everyone, but this is really cool historical information, is that when the Japanese met Commodore Perry, and Perry told them, open the doors or we'll blow them apart, you know, pretty much, the gunboat diplomacy thing, and then the Japanese got exposed to the Western world, much like people these days get into anime and Japanese culture, the Japanese got really into British culture when they were exposed to the world at large. They started to send out their first expeditions around the world, and it's so interesting. You can pull up Voices of the Past here on YouTube. They do a lot of recounting of the Japanese, the Japanese stories of their first expeditions around the world, and they were dressing up in their traditional clothes, traveling around the world, and by the time they got back, this was the craziest thing, by the time these Japanese explorers, I guess you could call them, would return to Japan, they would still be in their original traditional clothes that they left Japan with, and the Japanese, by the time they returned, were already wearing Western three-piece suits with top hats. They had already started to go in the direction of a British parliamentary system under the Meiji Restoration. It's an incredibly interesting history with Japan. They were going so, like, Britcore, pretty much, I guess you could call it, that they were even buying British dreadnoughts, pre-dreadnoughts at the time, and even afterwards they started to buy British dreadnoughts and then refit them into Japan's I guess you could call it, needs. So it's a very interesting history with Japan, but at the same time, they existed at the same era of the cowboys, and also some Japanese came to America in the 1860s, right when Japan was just getting exposed to the rest of the world, and they came to America, and their story about like California and what it was like at the time and what was so interesting and fascinating to them was so cool. And at the same time, I bet they would have thought the same thing about the Cossacks. But yes, to get back to your question, well, your statement really, the Cossacks are very similar to the Cowboys in a way where they're free-going spirit, I guess you could say. And I have to say that that is a very good comparison and analogy in between the two, is that the Cossacks are a lot like the Texans at least 100 years ago. So I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address the question. Also add in a little bit of interesting worldwide history, because I've always, of course, a huge history buff, so I just know stuff like that. And so I thank you so much for the support. And with that being said, we're on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $13 donation from Simon Shorthouse. And Simon, I have no idea why you want to do this to me, but here we go. Ukraine shells sea ships by the seashore. The sea ships Ukraine shells are surely sea ships. If Ukraine shells sea ships, where are the sea ships they shell?
Well, I thank you so much for the support, and I'm glad that you did torture Matthew. It's always fun to hear him try and get through that, because you can hear sometimes that he is struggling a little. So I thank you very much for the support and providing all of us with a little bit of entertainment. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And moving on, we have a $10 donation from Raphael Harris, who says, Enforcer, power of Leaf Spring Army to rise above horror and brutality of Russian murderers, and stay focused on the goal of a free Ukraine only through unity and leadership of Zelensky. Stay strong.
I thank you so much for the support, and I can't agree with that statement. I believe that Zelensky is the glue that's holding Ukraine together right now, and we can see that he is a large amount of support from around the entirety of Ukraine in what he's doing. So I hope that he is able to continue on this war as well as it's being fought right now, and as united as the country is right now, and make sure that they are on their way to victory. It appears that they mostly are, although the situation around Severodonetsk is looking a little questionable. I think that they will be on their way to victory sooner rather than later. And so I thank you very much for the support. I hope that does address the comment. And with that being said, we're on to the next question.
And next up, let me recognize a $10 donation from Blake Dunlap. He doesn't leave a comment, but we appreciate your support to the channel very much. So up next, we have a $10 donation from RDY4THDLL, who is a longtime channel supporter, and says, Enforcer, do you think the Donbas can be overcome and won by Ukraine forces?
I think the Donbas is going to be a little bit of a tricky situation. The thing is that the Donetsk and Luhansk region devolved into trench warfare from 2014 onwards, and so these front lines are largely static for both sides. Any kind of progress that's made in breaching Donetsk and Luhansk will most likely be made by the Ukrainians pushing from Mariupol and east, or from Bilovost and south. I'm not really seeing many other options for that, because most of the defensive lines here are incredibly strong, and so it will be very hard to breach them. It'll have to be, of course, like a end of the war, the Donetsk and Luhansk republics have no manpower whatsoever to field for them to feasibly break through and try and retake that. And that's something that I don't like to say, but that's also, on the flip side, why we haven't seen the Russians making any progress whatsoever on the Donetsk and Luhansk fronts and pushing straight through them. The only way that they were able to peel the Ukrainians off of their defensive lines from Volnovakha all the way down to Novoazovsk is because a naval invasion force landed near Mariupol, and also Russians rolled up from Crimea and east towards those defensive lines, and so they were peeled off of them and had to withdraw. Same thing up here. You know, of course, it was a different layout on how the Russians kind of got behind them, but they still had to withdraw because they were about to be surrounded, and that's the only reason that those parts of the defensive lines fell apart. So I hope that kind of addresses the question in a way. I do think it would be difficult for the Ukrainians to retake Donetsk and Luhansk, but it's not impossible. I just think it'll be very hard to breach those initial defenses at the start. And so, thank you very much, and with that being said, we're on to the next one.
And next up, we have a $10 donation from BC Skyman, who says, does Ukraine have the ability to resupply with overwhelming forces and equipment so they can defeat Russia in the Donbas and the Southern Front?
Can you reread that one for me real quick? I think I missed the country at the start.
He says, does Ukraine have the ability to resupply with overwhelming forces and equipment so they can defeat Russia in the Donbas and Southern Front?
I think that they have the current ability right now to launch counterattacks, well, minor counterattacks everywhere but Kharkiv. They can launch major ones there because of the Russian condition. I think minor counterattacks would be the best goal for them to look for. And something I'm thinking about, and Matthew, I'd like you to run a poll on this idea here, is dropping my censorship of what the Ukrainians are going to do, and start talking about what they most likely will do. Because I've been able to look around the internet a little bit more lately, and I'm starting to see that a lot of people literally disclose the exact location of every single Ukrainian unit on the internet, and also a lot of them, I also saw Ronnie do this, pretty much just say what I'm thinking and what the Ukrainians will most likely do to take advantage of some weak areas on the front line. So I'm actually thinking about taking that censor down and actually just stating the stuff clearly, because I think that it would be a little bit more beneficial to the news. But if Matthew could run a poll on that real quick, we'll see what everyone thinks. If everyone is overwhelmingly in support of me talking about what the Ukrainians will most likely do, I will do that. If not, I will make sure not to. So we'll be waiting for that poll to pop up. But at the same time, I thank you very much for the support, and I hope that does answer the question. And with that, we're going to move. Well, no, I'm actually going to answer it a little bit. I think that the Ukrainian, oh yeah, I actually did answer. I'm sorry. They could conduct minor counterattacks here and there, but nothing too large as of the moment, because it does appear that the Russians have been able to consolidate a little. So with that, I thank you so much for the support, and we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up here, we have a visit from Jason Bourne. He puts in a $10 donation and says, I wish we had an anti-ballistic surface-to-air missile or some kind of projectile that would intercept ICBMs just as well as the Iron Dome intercepts Grad rockets. Then Russia would pose no threat.
I believe that we do. I believe that the Patriot missile defense system can actually intercept ICBMs, although I'm not entirely sure about that. But I do know that the United States does have defensive systems here within the nation that can shoot down intercontinental ballistic missiles flying over the Arctic Circle. On the other hand, the Russians did develop a missile called the Satan, which can actually fly over the South Pole and towards the United States in that direction, which we have absolutely no defenses against. So we do have defenses in a way, which do somewhat moot the Russian nuclear capabilities, but not entirely, because some nuclear weapons would still slip through and land on their targets. So I thank you very much for the support, Jason Bourne. Of course, it's wonderful to hear that we do have a hitman around, and I hope that does answer the question. And with that, we're going to move on to the next one.
And moving on, we now have a $10 donation from Hoodoo, Texas, who says, Then spake brave Horatius, to every man upon the earth, death cometh soon or late. How can man die better than facing fearful odds for the ashes of his fathers and the temples of his gods?
Well, I thank you very much for the support. That's pretty cryptic. I'm not really sure if I'm going to be able to go into that, but I do thank you very much for the support and the interesting words. And with that, we're on to the next question.
And next up, we have a super chat from F3D2 Sky Knight 2, who puts in a $10 donation, excuse me. They say, warm and friendly visit from conscription board. How do you say GTFO in Russian? Russia will soon apply for membership in NATO to get some protection from Ukraine.
Well, I thank you very much for the support, and I think that may be within Russia's future. They're getting it handed to them so bad, considering that this war is now 3 months old, and they still haven't managed to win the country yet. I think that they will most likely be applying for NATO membership to try and protect themselves, and of course that's just in jest. Beyond that, I believe the Russian way to say GTFO would be like Pizdeks, suka, bliat. I don't know. I mean, like, that's just like idiot, you know, like mother effer, pretty much. That's what that means in Russian. But I hope that answers the question in a way, both parts, and I do thank you very much for the support. And with that, we're on to the next question.
And next up here, sorry, just got distracted for a moment there. I think we have a bot I need to take care of. Anyways, we have a $10 donation from William Allen, again, who says, do you think they are staying behind with their dead until those are cared for?
Could you read that one more time?
Do you think they are staying behind with their dead until those are cared for?
I don't think so. I think they've gotten all the wounded out, as far as I know. So I don't think they're sitting there to take care of the wounded. because if they had all surrendered, the wounded would have been, you know, taken care of then. So I hope that answers the question. Kind of in brief, I think they're staying behind because they're afraid of what the Russians might do to them if they surrender, which is a very reasonable fear to have. So I hope that answers the question. I thank you so much for the support. And with that being said, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 donation from William Allen again, who says, per Mike Adams, Enforcer, you are late in your news with the Azov. They were preparing the bodies of the dead for transport and have already surrendered today. Both countries have confirmed that.
I'm not entirely sure because the news I've been getting today shows that the commander of the Azovstal said it's day 86 of the war. Let's go back and watch that again, and you'll clearly see he says day 86, which is today.
Слава Україні! 86 днів оборони Маріуполя.
Day 86. So I can't be late in my reporting, because if they had surrendered by yesterday, this message would have never come out with him saying it's the 86th day. It would have been the 85th day. So as far as I know, he's still inside the Azovstal. They're still fighting as of this moment, and that's how he was able to get that video out. The Russians, of course, have claimed that they've even won all of Mariupol, and there's like no fighting left, but we know that there still is some. So sadly, I'm going to have to disagree with that because he said 86th day, which is today. So once again, thank you very much for the support, but the evidence here shows that they are still there today. And I think that the other channel you're talking about may have had some preemptive reporting and have said something a little bit early. So I thank you very much for the support. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And just real quick to go over the final results of that poll. Should we censor locations about the war for OPSEC? 61% said yes, we should censor, and 38% said no, we should not.
And with that, we're going to make sure not to talk about Ukrainian battle plans, at least here on this channel. Guest stars, of course, can talk about it. Of course, if Starsky wants to talk about the plans of the Ukrainians, or Ronnie Fit from Funker, who will be on the Sunday as well, they can. I won't stop them. Of course, they're free to say whatever they wish, as long as it doesn't, like, you know, delve into American politics too far and pick a side. And so with that, we will make sure not to give away locations. I actually saw someone trying to act like I was like all up in my laurels and stuff, but I just want to make sure that on my end I'm not letting out any extra information or anything detrimental to the Ukrainians that I would feel guilty for if I saw it actually panned out into something. So make sure to keep on censoring that, and with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $10 donation from Anthony Dobson again. And thank you, Anthony, for your continued support. He says, have you seen the Seinfeld clip where Kramer is playing Risk and Russia invades Ukraine? It's hilarious. And yes, Anthony, I've personally seen that clip. I showed it to the Enforcer like right as this war started, and we were like, wow, what were the odds of them having a scene like exactly like what we're going through now?
Newman, you don't understand. The Ukraine is weak. It's feeble. Hey, don't talk about Ukraine. Ukraine's not weak. Yeah, whatever, man. We're playing a game. Don't you talk about my motherland like that. And then he smashes the boy. Yeah, I know that one scene really well. Do you think we could play that, Matthew, without it getting copyrighted?
It would probably get a copyright, would be my guess.
Ah, man. I would play it. I mean, like, is it worth it? I mean, like, maybe we could just take a copyright on this one video and show it.
It's up to you.
We're going to take a copyright. I think it's, if it is a copyright strike for any reason, I'm going to show it here real quick. Hopefully they don't, and I will maybe try and contest it. Ukraine is weak. Seinfeld. So here we go. Oh wait, I'm going to mute this because I'm not running this ad. I'm sorry, y'all. I always told y'all I was never going to run ads, and this isn't an ad I'm trying to run. So here's the video.
Are you sure you know where the impound yard is?
Oh, stop stalling. Come on.
I can't think. There's all this noise.
Or is it because I've built a stronghold around Greenland? I've driven you out of Western Europe? And I've left you teetering on the brink of complete annihilation.
I'm not beaten yet. I still have armies in the Ukraine.
The Ukraine. You know what the Ukraine is? It's a sitting duck. A road apple, Newman. The Ukraine is weak. It's feeble. I think it's time to put the hurt on the Ukraine.
I come from Ukraine. You not say Ukraine weak?
Yeah, well, we're playing a game here, pal.
Ukraine is game to you? How about I take your little bonus?
Oh, man. I love that. I love Seinfeld's really funny to me, and that was one of the shining moments that's come really ironically these days back into the forelight. But yeah, that was pretty funny to me. So had to bring that up again because that was of course hilarious. And so I thank you very much for the support. And with that being said, we're on to the next question.
And moving on to the next one, we have a $10 donation from William Allen again, who says, "Do you suppose the pic in the Azov with the boxes stacked high were coffins? He also said to his mission was to repatriate the dead."
I do not know about the pictures with the boxes stacked high. Unfortunately, I don't know about those. Well, wait a minute. I think I do. But these, if you're talking about these are not boxes. These are still like box beams. So unfortunately, I don't think that's it. I don't know what picture you're talking about, sadly. So unfortunately, due to ignorance, I cannot comment on that. I haven't seen it, and so I can't really talk about it all too well because I just don't know what it's about. So I thank you very much for the support. Unfortunately, I couldn't answer that question. And with that being said, we're on to the next one.
And next up, we have a $10 donation from David Colley, who says, "Seems like the southern assault," or he meant to say, "seems like the southern assault is slowed. Maybe is it a lack of naval artillery?"
The southern assault is slow?
Yes, that's what he says.
I don't think the naval artillery, beyond the missiles that they can launch, like cruise missiles and such, can reach as far in coastally. Yeah, probably not, because the range is 47 miles, and I think most modern ships have a small, like 105 millimeter, 120 millimeter gun on them, which can only fire so far before it runs out of range. And it's certainly not going to be firing around 40 miles inland. So I think that naval artillery has been largely out of the picture unless it's some kind of missile-borne, munitions. And I believe that the southern front has largely stalled just because the Ukrainians have secured a very strong defensive line down here, which is actually a defensive line I drew out in the first 3 weeks of the war, I think. I said the Ukrainians are most likely going to fall back to here and have a really strong position, and we've seen them holding it for about 2.5 months at this point. So I thank you very much for support, but I think the reason why the Russians aren't making any progress down here is just because the Ukrainians have secured a pretty sizable and strong defensive line. And so with that being said, thank you very much for the support, and we're going to move on to the next question.
And folks, please bear with us. We're having a large amount of bots in the chat tonight. Unfortunately, I can only get them so fast, but if you see them, please tag me, and I will get rid of them as quick as I can. So up next, we have a $10 donation from Vance Hicks. He doesn't leave a comment, but Vance, thank you very much for your support. And up next, we have a $9 donation from Junebug, who says, "Good job."
Well, I thank you very much for the support, and it is always good to know that there are people out there who think I do a great job. So thank you very much for the support, and with that being said, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 donation from Michelle Russell, who says, "I prefer you not reveal your face for your safety. Please put up a poll so we can let you out of your promise."
We'll put up a poll for that. If that's the case, then that means I'm going to have to ditch the nuclear video, though, because all the footage I made for that had my face in it. Of course, I could maybe use some of the footage that I got where I didn't show my face, but that wasn't a lot of it. So we'll put up a poll for that, and we'll see. And based off of it, we'll just go with it. So I thank you very much for your support. The poll is up, so I hope that does appease you. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have another super chat from David Colley, who puts in a $10 donation and says, "With the loss of naval command and control and much of landing transport gone, talking Odessa."
If you're talking about the Black Sea Fleet and its condition to launch a naval invasion on Odessa, they don't meet the prerequisites ground-wise for a naval invasion to occur. There would be no way to logistically supply the thing beyond it landing on the shore. They don't have the abilities to do that at this point, and on top of that, the anti-ship missile batteries near Odessa are incredibly strong at this point, which negates the actual practicality of doing anything like that. So I thank you very much for the support. I hope that does answer the question, at least in brief, and with that, we're on to the next one.
And next up, we have a $5 donation from Electrostatic1, who says, "What's happening in Popasna is very, very bad. There's a full breakout. This is very bad. And you seem to be missing how important this is."
Well, I thank you for the support. I actually covered that. Can you reread that one to me one more time?
They said, what's happening in Popasna is very, very bad. There's a full breakout, and this is very bad. And you seem to be missing how this is important.
Well, I don't know when you put that super chat in because I covered that like first thing when we moved to Severodonetsk. I mean, like Matthew can back me up. That was something I said.
Yes.
I've heard about the breakthrough. I said if that's the case, that of course could jeopardize Severodonetsk. So, I hate to sound rude, but I have no idea where you're coming from because that was covered earlier in the stream. Don't know if you were paying attention or not, but that was covered. But I do thank you for the support. With that, we're on to the next one.
And up next here, well, I see a lot of people saying that in regards to the poll, maybe wear a balaclava or some mask. I'm not sure how that would look on camera. It's like Enforcer turns into a bank robber on camera.
Turn into Life of Boris. I wear a balaclava everywhere.
Yeah. I don't know how that would look.
You know, really looking at the poll right now, speaking of which, it's really close. It's tied. It's like 55 and 45, which is actually one of the most narrow margins. It's actually going down. Now it's an 8% difference. And so it looks like there's a half and half split nearly on people who want to see my face and people who don't want me to show my face. And so what I think I may do, and this one, and considering where we're filming, this is a little risky, and I feel like I get harassed a decent bit, but I might throw on the whole entire Enforcer kit, you know, the World War I gear, and then just walk around and film in that. But you're not going to be able to hear my voice, and I have to voice that over in the studio. Well, really not voice it over in the studio, voice it over right here. But I don't know, because if we decide that, and the poll keeps on getting narrower and narrower, it's almost a half and half split at this point. I would have to go and throw out the third time I filmed the video, and I'd have to go and film it a fourth time, and then probably get shot by company guns, because I'm going to a place that's protected by armed guards. So, with that, we're going to see how that poll unfolds, but it's really close right now. We're going to let that one run for the rest of the night, until the stream's over. And so with that, we're on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $10 donation from Hoodoo, Texas again, who says, did anyone recognize the poem Horatius at the Bridge? You are not worth your salt as a historian if you do not recognize it. It was an inspiration to Winston Churchill and is applicable to Ukraine.
Well, I thank you very much for the support. And while I am a historian, and of course you put the lofty goal, I don't like when people put lofty goals on that, because I never tell anyone you're not something if you don't know this. But I've never heard about Horatius on the Bridge, and I'm a pretty big history buff. I'm literally known by everyone in my life as being the biggest history buff they've ever known, and I've never heard about Horatius on the Bridge, sadly. But I do thank you for the support. I hope that does address the comment in a way. And with that, we're moving on to the next question.
And we just got a suggestion from Thomas Gonzalez, who said, how about just showing half your face?
Half face. Also, I saw someone say wear a GIMP mask, and the answer to that's no. Hell no. I won't ever do that. That'd be weird. But with that, on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 donation from Pale Rider, who says, do you think Ukraine will blow up the bridge in the Azov? Thank you for all you do, and Slava Ukraine.
Well, I thank you very much for the support, and I think that the Ukrainians want to blow that thing up. That's actually something we'll be running flak on. We're not letting any questions like that get to Starsky. Last time a question like that was asked on stream to him when he was over here, he almost had a conniption fit because so many people asked that question. The Ukrainians do not have the ability to attack that bridge right now, nor the amount of arms they would need to successfully destroy it at the moment. So the answer to that question is yes, they're eyeballing it, but they don't have the ability to do it right now, and I don't think they'll be having that chance in the near future. So I thank you very much for the support, and I hope that does answer the question. And with that, we're moving on to the next one.
And up next here, we have a, I haven't had time to convert it, but an $80 NZ donation from the person whose username I cannot say, and I can't remember what he wanted me to refer to him as, but you get the point. Thank you for your support. So he says, Private Lunchtime says, we are the Leaf Spring Army. Our mission is to inform and protect, to honor justice over politics, to dine out on the sockeye salmon, and to keep our Dick Cheney. Our battle hymn goes, dun 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 dun, Hiram Slava.
I like how you just added a random tune to the dance. Yeah, it was like a jingle nearly. I mean, like, I didn't expect you to do that. I thought you were gonna do like the Bayraktar thing where it's like dun 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 dun. You went dun 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 dun. I was like, what? Dude, that was funny. Actually, I like
a whole new tune to
it. Yeah, from now on, whenever the Enforcer intro comes through, instead of hearing that little sound in the Morse code, you're just gonna hear Matthew go dun 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 dun, and it's going to just
look. DJ Bonebreaker would be proud of me. I just created a whole new beat.
Yeah, and speaking of which, I hope y'all like the intro music tonight. And also, just for everyone to know, I added in the VDV music because a lot of people have been asking for it, and honestly, the VDV is a meme because they're just so bad at and actually fighting that I threw in that song in an ironic way. Don't think it was supposed to be in like support of the VDV. It was actually making fun of them by playing the song. But to get back to what well, I can't say his name either because if I do, it's like one of those trick names like Ben and Dover, if you see what I'm saying. So sadly, I can't say it because I think YouTube would start like saying bit nasty things about me. But our mission to inform and protect, that's sure. To honor justice over politics, yeah. To dine out on the sockeye salmon, yeah, we don't really want to dine out on them. They're our allies. Eating them would be questionable. But yeah, I can see what you're saying. And to keep our dicks chainy. William Allen's got a lot of credit for that one. Our battle hymn goes dun 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 dun. And yeah, that's true. And Heroem Slava. And I have to agree, Heroem Slava. And with that, I thank you so much for the support. It does help out this channel a lot. And with that, we're on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $10 donation from BC Skyman again, who says, I have a question regarding Kryvyi Rih. I noticed that the Russian lines have moved way up above Kherson. They have moved considerably since 2 weeks ago. What is the situation there?
So the reason why they've moved on my map, and they weren't there before, so that pocket had been there for an incredibly long while. Ever since the Russians were able to cross the dam at Novokakhovka, they've pretty much been there that whole time. The problem is that I was never able to update on that on my map because I never got substantial enough video footage to show that there was a sizable force there. And so I kind of put it within the same criteria as the forces at Bashtanka and also the breakthrough convoy that went towards Vosnesensk, and I assumed that there were no actual sizable Russian forces there. But then we got enough video footage and evidence to show that there were Russian forces that were pretty much permanently there at the moment, and so then that's when this was added to the map. So nothing's really changed, it's just that I finally got enough information to update what was going on here. But as of now, that's been in a stalemate for about a month. We haven't seen it move since then. So I hope that answers the question, and I do thank you very much for the support. And with that being said, we're going to move on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $20 donation from Yoli H. Excuse me, I'm seeing some really funny stuff in the chat here. Let me try to get through this question. Yoli says, will Russia have a population decline because of the war?
Well, I thank you very much for the support, and I don't think the losses they're taking are big enough to indicate a population loss. Like 30,000 people is like the size of a small city. A large town / a very small city. So I don't think this will be dropping their population by a drastic degree, but the generational gap that they have left over from World War II will certainly do that for them. And that's kind of a passive population loss, considering that happened almost 70, 80 years ago at this point. So I thank you very much for the support. Of course, you've been a long-time channel supporter, and it does help out this channel a lot. So I hope that answers the question in a way. And with that, I got to ask Matthew, what is he busting out laughing about? Because I want to hear some of these comments.
Oh, we'll get to it in just a second. It's actually a super chat, and it's coming up in about 2 questions away.
Oh, all right. And with that, on to the next one.
All right, and just to let everybody know, we have about 10 super chats left before we get to our plentiful live chat questions. So stick around. We'll get to them shortly. So up next, we have a $5 donation from Diffuse56, who is a channel legend, who says, I'm thinking the M777's counter battery radar will prove to among the most valuable pieces of equipment given the current tactical situation. Do you concur?
I would have to agree with that. Counter battery radar will, of course, allow the M777 to line up its counter battery fire much quicker than a normal artillery piece and rain down that fire most likely before that artillery unit can scoot in the middle of its shoot and scoot. So I believe that will actually lead to a higher amount of attrition and combat losses in the Russian artillery units, and also lead to the M777 having a higher level of efficiency, and it may actually change the doctrine of the Ukrainians using that piece, and it may become an entirely counter-battery piece where it's targeting Russian artillery solely instead of being used on enemy units like tanks and infantry and armored personnel carriers. So I thank you very much for the support, Diffuse56. You've been around forever. And of course, the support does help us to run this channel, and any amount of support helps us out a load. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $5 donation from Sweaty Chungus, who says, David Attenborough has a video comparing salmon to Russian tanks. It's titled, David Attenborough narrates how Russian tanks end their life in Ukraine.
I've seen that. I wanted to add it on, but I had already shown that footage the day before. It was about 2 days old at that point, and I didn't want to show it then because I felt like I was going to be revisiting old news, although I did get a hoot out of it. It was very funny. So I thank you very much for the support, and I hope that does address the comment in a way, because I did see it. It was hilarious, and I highly recommend if anyone can have the time to find it, go find it. It's great. You'll get a good laugh out of it. And with that, I thank you so much for the support, and we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, DJ Bonebreaker puts in a $10 donation and says, don't make me do a dun 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 remix, LOL. Also, if you're curious about my user icon, it's based on the U.S. Navy Fire Controlman logo, which I was from 1999 to 2005, specifically for air defense systems. And thank you for your service, by the way.
And thank you for your service as well, DJ Bonebreaker. We have a lot of veterans who watch this channel, and of course, it's always wonderful to know that y'all do enjoy what I do. And that's always something interesting to me, because I'm always wondering, do veterans actually find what I'm saying reasonable and sensible? And I've actually heard a lot of them say yeah. And of course, obviously, with Ronnie Fitt and them appreciating what I say, which is an entire veteran community running that channel, that adds some merit in my head to what I'm doing, instead of just feeling like I'm a Dumbo just rambling here. So I thank you very much for enjoying the content we put out here. And also, I would love to see a dun 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 remix.
Yes.
Yeah, I would love to see you actually do that on Matthew for sure, because he was the one who originally did it, and I'd like to hear it. So if you could ever make one, I would listen to it. And I may actually play it during, well, I mean, if it's really, really good, it would have to be really, really good. I may play that at the beginning of the countdown, like within the first minute or so, because I think it'd be funny and a lot of people would like it. And also, U.S. Navy Fire Controlman, that is really cool. And I once again have to thank you for your service. And with that being said, we're moving on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $5 donation from Vasily, who says, Go Legion. Let's take it back from the dictator.
Well, thank you very much for the support, and yes, I hope that the Russian Legion that's fighting for Ukraine can hopefully help Ukraine win this war. And with that, I thank you very much for the support, and we're moving on to the next question.
And real quick, Enforcer, do you mind if I end the current poll so that way I can run a poll, because Alex Wolf recommended doing a vet poll to see how many vets we have in the chat, and that's actually a pretty good idea.
Yeah, that's actually really cool. We'll end the poll that we have right now. It's very close. I'm not really sure which direction we're leaning in. Really, we're leaning in the direction of yes, of course, although the margin's very small. But with that, I do thank you all for weighing in and letting us know what y'all are thinking. With the poll being so close, honestly, I think I may go to making videos like most people do on YouTube, where they do not show their face. I don't really feel like showing my face is really a key to credibility. That just gives people a face to the voice, and then that gives the psychos a way to come and try and kill me if they ever see me in person. So with that, once again, thank you all for weighing in, and we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $5 donation from Jim Darby, who says something in Ukrainian, I think, or Russian. I'm going to put it in the chat. I'm not sure what it says because I can't read that language, but hopefully somebody does.
Let me take a look at this.
If you can see that, Enforcer, on your screen.
I haven't seen it yet. It should be popping up soon, though. It's not showing up for me yet. Are you sure you put it out?
Yes, it is in the chat.
Huh, that's wild. Like, I don't even see you commenting. I saw the last one I saw was from Diffuse, like when you mentioned Diffuse 56. Huh.
It might have tuned it out or something. Unless you have top chat selected, you might have to choose live chat on your setting.
Let's see. Let's see, let me scroll back up. I don't see it. I don't even see it with live chat on instead of top chat.
Huh. Well, that's weird.
So I was actually going to translate that on stream. Could you send it over Discord, maybe?
Yeah, let me grab it real quick, and I can send it over. Let's see here. Well, if I can find it. Just a moment.
All right. Take your time.
Just have a quick moment of silence here.
A quick moment of silence while we try and translate the thing. There we go. Let's put that through and let's see what that says. Copy. Roger, roger. Let's go over here. Google Translate. We'll assume it's Ukrainian, and we'll put it in English.
People are saying it says kill orcs.
Yeah, it says kill the orcs. So I thank you very much for the support. I think considering that it is coming from a Ukrainian, apparently, since it is written in Ukrainian, we will, of course, give 100% support to all the Ukrainians who are over there currently carrying out on that task. So I thank you very much for the support, and we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $10 donation from BC Skyman again, who says, I just want to give a shout out to all the veterans here and thank you for your service. And BC Skyman, it looks like about 25% of the people that have done our poll, or 24%, are actually veterans. So thank you for that shout out.
That's really cool, actually, that a quarter of the viewers are veterans. That's actually a pretty high amount. I actually thought it was smaller. So I thank everyone who's a veteran who's here that does appreciate my commentary. Of course, I don't have any military experience, and I never try and pretend like I do. I just read a lot of history books, and then I base my large-scale pictures off of historical contexts for the most part. So I'm glad that y'all do enjoy it, and y'all are actually watching this. And so with that, we're on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $5 donation from Yahweh, who says, technology chip-starved firms are scavenging silicon from washing machines, and this came from Bloomberg.
Interesting. That may be the reason why the Russians are literally pulling like heists nearly to grab the washing machines. So I thank you very much for the support, and I hope that does address the comment in a way. And with that being said, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 donation from Brian Dumith, who says, enjoyed you on Funker. I am hooked now, and thank you for the in-depth reporting.
Hey, well, welcome over from the Funker team to the Leaf Spring Army. Hope you're around to stay for a long time. This channel will be running until the end of time, most likely. So I thank you very much, and I hope that you will enjoy all of the content that we put out from here forward. And in the future, I'll actually start veering off of Ukraine once this war is over, because, of course, I would like to go out to other horizons and look into other things, and hopefully it'll go pretty well. And so with that, thank you once again, and welcome you over to the team, to the Leaf Spring Army. And with that being said, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 donation from Tim Swenson again, who says, my second question is, what might the Chinese do if it keeps going south for Russia? And what do we know that China don't know, and vice versa?
Well, the Chinese are going to do absolutely nothing, even if it goes south for the Russians. The Chinese have left them high and dry, although they supposedly have a special relationship with them, because the Chinese need to ensure that their economy can continue to grow. China is a paper tiger, and they rely entirely on exports to grow their economy. If the exports stop flowing due to heavy sanctions, China will cease to be an economic world power, or a superpower as they're starting to become. And so the Chinese have to carefully weigh pretty much their entire future and make sure not to do anything that will be detrimental to it. So if the war continues to go south for the Russians, I don't believe the Chinese will step in and help them out at all. It's already gone south for them, considering it's lasted 3 months, and we haven't seen them step in yet. Also, weighing in on what the Chinese may know and we don't know, and vice versa, I'm not really sure, but I hope that does answer the question to a pretty good extent, and I thank you so much for the support. And with that, we're on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $10 donation from David Colley again, who says, 40 years, a U.S. Revolutionary and Civil War reenactor and historian, also served, and thank you for your commentary. You're pretty spot on, and I'm glad to support.
Well, I thank you so much for the support, David. It's also wonderful to hear that you're a reenactor as well. I've had a lot of reenactors that have been reenacting for an incredibly long time as well in my group, and they're a really cool group of people. Honestly, I have really high regard for all reenactors. Every single reenactor I've ever met has been the coolest, has been one of the coolest people on earth, and I think it's one of the greatest hobby communities out there. Never met a mean or a terrible reenactor. They've all been cool. Everyone helps each other out. I think it's a great community. Just really like it a lot. And also, I do not do Civil War. That's something that I haven't been doing because my group told me, and I only been doing this for like 2 or 3 years, and hardly at that because I've always been busy when most events come around. Like right now, I haven't been going to events because of the stream. But I haven't done Civil War, although I have been given the offer to get some lended clothes and a lended gun and go out there and do that stuff. Sadly, I've never been able to, but that is an era that I would like to do. It's the most common one here in the United States. Revolutionary War, I've gotten very close. I actually do McKay's Independent Ranger Company, which was a mercenary group from the Georgia colony hired by Governor Oglethorpe. And what was ironic is that at the time, I had no clue that one of my first ancestors that arrived in America was actually a McKay's Ranger, which was really weird, and I found that out after the fact, which was really, really cool. And so I thank you very much for the support. I hope that does address the comment pretty well, and I do thank you so much for enjoying my commentary. It does mean a lot to me. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And next up, let me recognize an $8 donation from Junebug, who does not leave a comment on that one. But Junebug, thank you very much for your continued support. We appreciate you being a viewer. And once more, we appreciate your support. So up next, we have a $5 donation from Tim Swenson. And he says, sorry for my horrible speech to text.
Oh, it's fine. It's totally fine. We tried to get through and sort it out. So you're a-okay, man. I understand. I have a friend that does teach text to speech, and it always comes out really bad for him too. So I thank you very much for the support, and you're fine. And with that, we're going to move on to another question. But before we do, I'm going to have to address something that Lucius said that I think is misrepresenting the reenacting community, and I don't like it one bit. Lucius said, like South Park showed, the rebels try and win all the battles. That's not true. Reenactments depict who won the battles, if there was a battle there. And even at the places where a battle didn't occur, the Confederates would win one day, the Union would win the other, and Civil War reenactments go as far as having the sides switch out uniforms. So while I could be a Confederate one day, the next day I'll be a Union soldier, and I switch out the uniforms. I've never done Civil War reenacting, but that's how it works in theory at some of the larger Civil War reenactments here in Alabama. So I don't really like, honestly, that people try and paint Civil War reenactors as a racist group of people. They're not. I think that's misrepresenting and painting a wrong picture about reenactors and a great community of people. I've never met a single racist reenactor the whole entire time I've been doing this thing, even the ones who do Civil War exclusively. So I think that's really misrepresenting the reenacted community. I don't really like that, honestly, because I feel like Civil War reenactors get a really bad rap, and that's what's leading to the Civil War community dying off and not getting new members, is that people are scared that if they do it, they're going to be painted as a racist because someone doesn't understand American history. Like some of my reenacting friends were dressed up in Union uniforms, which, if you remember in the Civil War, the Union, which was the actual U.S. government, was trying to emancipate the slaves. Someone ran up to them and started screaming at them that they were the racists, which is the funniest thing because they're in the uniforms of the soldiers that liberated the black people and liberated the slaves. So I didn't understand that, and I think that they get a bad rap, and I honestly don't really like that comment. I don't know if it's a joke or not, but I feel like that's misrepresenting the reenacting community, and especially the Civil War one, a lot. So with that, we're on to the next question.
And I think he might have been making a joke about that show South Park, potentially. I can't really tell, though, but possibly.
Yeah, but, still at the same time, like modern media always portrays reenactors as racist. Like, they could be doing anything, and you go into Vice News, they're trying to make reenactors racist there. You go to, anything, they're always trying to portray reenactors as, like, racist and backwards and stuff, and I don't think it's worthy of that. Go if y'all don't know reenactors too well, go check out Brandon F's channel. He's a American reenactor who does British stuff. And tell me that guy is a bad guy. He's a very nice guy. Very eccentric, but very nice as well. So with that, we're moving on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $5 donation from Vasily again, who says, The Alamo. As I'll say, you may go to hell. I go to Ukraine.
Well, I thank you very much for the support, and that's an interesting little quip right there. I'll make sure to try and remember that one. And with that, I thank you so much for the support. And with that being said, we're on to the next question.
And up next, we have a $5 donation from BSG Wolf, who says, Sorry, Seinfeld bored me to tears. 1 or 2 episodes I liked, Soup Nazi and that karate one.
Ah, man, well, I hate that. Honestly, I loved them all. Like there's so many that, like, are very memorable to me, like when Kramer like dressed up like a pimp, and at the end of the episode he got arrested by the cops and he was like, I'm not a pimp. And then, you know, there's other ones like when Poppy didn't wash his hands coming out of the restroom. There's just so many memorable things from Seinfeld. Honestly, my favorite. But, you know, to each his own. Everyone's not going to like the same thing, so I understand that you don't like it. It's just that I'm a huge fan of it. And so with that, we're on to the next question. And thank you very much for the support once again.
And up next, we have a $5 donation from Life Decoded, who says, Let me pay you to watch Archer. It's genuinely the funniest thing I've seen in years. Quality is 100% throughout its runtime.
I'll make sure to try and check it out. It seems like a lot of people are talking about Archer, and so I'll try and check it out if I ever get the free time. I don't really have a lot of free time, and due to some stuff that's happened here in our lives, my free time has completely disappeared. So I'm working entirely on the stream, or I'm completing other tasks and stuff that I need to do throughout the day. So I actually have no time, excuse me, to really do anything, but I will try and check it out. So I thank you very much for the support, and with that being said, on to the next question.
And up next, Sea Dog Pirate puts in a $5 donation and says, It's looking like Putin is now trying to pick a fight with Israel.
Well, yeah, kind of. But they also did apologize to Israel as well about the comments they made about the Jews. So I think that they maybe, I haven't really been following that information a lot because, of course, that's kind of out of the scope of the war in a way. So I haven't seen a lot about it, so I'm going to have to actually declare ignorance. I only know about a few of the interactions that the Russians and the Israelis have had recently, but not enough to actually weigh in on it. So I thank you very much for the support. I'm sorry I couldn't answer that. And with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And up next, let me recognize a $5 donation from Doina Campine. Thank you very much for your support of the channel. It's very much appreciated. And up next, we have a $5 donation from Junebug again, who says, Objection to my question. Probably Amber Heard or Putin. And yes, I did see that clip where that attorney did get up and object to his own question. That was one of the most cringiest things I've ever seen in a courtroom.
Honestly, that entire trial is cringe. And one of the funniest things to me was when the guy said megapint, and then Johnny Depp just said a megapint. And it was like a moment where everyone was like, what's a megapint, really? It's a really weird trial. I don't really weigh into it too much because I don't know much about either of them, really. I don't really get into celebrity culture a lot. But still, it does have some very funny moments in it whenever I catch something passing by me. So I thank you very much for the support, and I hope that does address the comment. And with that being said, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 donation from Spencer P., who says, People watch because of the content. Anyone overly interested in what you look like is sus. Keep fighting the good fight and rip Betty White.
Yes, rest in peace, Betty White, and I do thank you very much for the support. I think a lot of people are interested in what I look like because they want to have a face to the voice, and that's something that's always weird to me because I always feel like people build up this expectation, you know, and that kind of worries me a little bit, that people may think that I have a perfectly chiseled jawline, 6-pack abs, I'm like 7 foot, you know, like the perfect model man, and I'm not, you know, like by no means I'm not like ugly or hideous, I'm not Quasimodo, but at the same time, I'm not probably what you're visioning in your head. So that's always something to me about face reveals and stuff, is that people may be disappointed. You know, while that sounds pretty brutal as an assessment on myself, that's something I've seen a couple of times in the YouTube world where people did face reveals and then everyone was like, ew, you know? But anyways, I thank you very much for the support. I hope that kind of does address the comment in a way. And with that being said, we're on to the next question.
And Enforcer, we do have about 6 more super chats and 2 more that just came in. Would you like to go ahead and put a cap on those for the night so we have time for the live chats?
Yes, we'll put a cutoff on the super chats for the night. I thank everyone so much for the support. Sadly, the limited edition merch has been taken off the store at this point about an hour ago. But if you would like to support the channel, make sure to throw in a super chat tomorrow, because we won't be able to answer any more questions for tonight, but we will get to them first thing tomorrow if you throw in a super chat. So once again, I thank you all for the support. We're going to answer everyone's super chats that are left, get to some live chat questions, and then we're going to round out the stream for the night. And so with that, on to the next question.
So next up, we have a $10 donation from David Colley again. And thank you very much, David, for your continued support of the channel. He says, I specialize in medical and infantry. I reenact both sides. Back to today, this is a battle for democracy, much like our own. God bless and support Ukraine.
Well, I thank you very much once again for the support, David, and it is, of course, very normal, as far as I know, to hear that Civil War reenactors do both sides, because I think that's just the way it's done then. It's not done that way in World War I reenacting. Like, all I have for World War I is the American Expeditionary Force. I don't have anything else. I don't have any Imperial German Army stuff or anything like that, but I do thank you so much for the support and also weighing in on that again, and I do have to agree that this modern day fight in Ukraine is a fight for democracy versus totalitarianism, like we're seeing in Russia. So I thank you once again for the support, and with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have, Google Sheets is having an issue. Just a moment. We have a $5 donation from Honest M, who says, blur your face or use a mustache and glasses and military helmet or something similar when filming, just like Dr. Disrespect.
Well, and thank you so much for the support, but the crazy thing is that you pretty much just described what my face looks like. I have a goat, like, just for y'all to know a little bit, and this, I guess, will give y'all a better idea of what I look like. I wear glasses. I'm blind, pretty much, so I have to wear glasses. I also have a goatee, but my goatee has a very, very thick mustache on it. In fact, I've grown out the sides long enough that I can actually curl it upwards now, which looks neat, but I don't do that. And yeah, I mean, like, if I was wearing the World War I stuff, I'd be wearing a helmet. So you pretty much described the general features of my face pretty much dead on, and it was accidentally. So I thank you very much for the support, and that kind of gives you a better idea of what I look like a little bit just by visual description. So with that, we're going to move on to the next question.
And next up, we have a $5 donation from Jim Darby, who says, does Ukraine have enough soldiers to sustain a long war?
As far as I know, yes, they do. And considering the losses that they've taken, which has only been 1% of their armed forces as far as the public figures have gone, they could hold out in this war for an incredibly long time. So I hope that does answer the question. I thank you so much for the support. And with that being said, we're on to the next one.
And next up, we have a $3 donation from D'Angelo, I think's how you say it, D'Angelo1337, who says, Sic Semper Tyrannis, Putin's fate has been sealed.
I would have to agree. Putin's fate has been sealed as a terrible leader, but about the coup, I'm not really sure. But I do thank you very much for the support. I hope that does address the comment. And with that being said, we're on to the next one.
And next up, we have a $2 donation from VMan29397, who says, how significant would the fall of Vovchansk be?
The fall of Vovchansk, to cover that quickly, and I'm actually kind of like going through these a little bit faster because I just realized I have to be up in 4 hours. So the answer to that question is that the capture of Vovchansk would cut off most of the supplies that would probably be heading to Izium, as far as I can tell. There's only 2 highways that come in from Russia towards Izium. There is the P-79, and then there is this highway here, the T-2108. And so if Vovchansk is captured, that means there's only 1 highway left rather than this one here, which is the T-2104, that could lead supplies down to Izium. So I thank you very much for the support, and I hope that does answer the question. And with that, what the hell? Anyways, we're going to be moving on to the next question.
I'm sorry, I just saw something that was almost made me almost die of laughing.
But anyways, was it from SMH?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I was going, what the hell about?
So anyways, we have a $2 donation from Cult member who says, I got my sticker yesterday, thank you.
Well, I thank you so much for the support, and I hope you do enjoy the merch. I'm sorry, I'm trying to recover from seeing the absolute mental flashbang I just saw in the live chat there. But I thank you so much for the support. It does help with this channel a lot. And with that, we're moving on to the next question.
And next up, I want to recognize one more super chat that came in real quick from the person, I can't say their name. They put in a $20 NZ super chat and say, AKA Private Lunchtime, stay faceless, bro. You know the old saying, never meet your heroes, keep the mystery going. That's what I think.
I think we may be heading in that direction because it seems like a lot of people don't want me to show my face, and I think it would be a lot easier for me filming-wise to make sure I don't show my face and just keep the enforcer thing going. And also, if I ever do get on camera, hopefully I'll be a big enough channel by that point that if I ever show up somewhere with a gas mask on, they're not thinking, oh my god, this is going to be the next, like, mass shooting guy who's going to run this thing, and they're going to be thinking, oh, that's that guy, you know, he does that thing, that's his whole entire gig. So I thank you so much for the support, and I hope I did address that comment pretty well. And with that being said, we're moving on to the next question.
And next up, $2 donation from Yahweh, who says, Enforcer Betty White sends her regards.
I hope you didn't
How
have
can that be?
yeah, I hope you didn't have a seance to get that answer, but I thank you very much for the support. And with that being said, we're on to the next question.
And next up here, we have a $2 donation from Acid Rain XX, who says, 4 baked beans and tortilla shells.
Yeah. Well, I thank you very much for the support. Thank you for providing us with the food. And with that being said, we're on to the next question.
And real quick, one more super chat. We have a $10 super chat from Brendan Henderson, who says, face reveal, end of war.
Maybe we might do it then. I don't know. But if we're getting rid of the face reveal, that means that the video I was planning on doing is not coming out for some time longer. So thank you very much for the support once again. And with that, we're moving on to the next question.
And our last super chat of the night goes to CA Lags, who puts in a $2 donation and says, LPR Recruiter says, can we have your liver?
And they will. They will get it. And I thank you very much for the support and the little joke. And with that being said, we're going to move on to the next question.
And that's actually our last super chat. So now we are moving on to our live chat questions. So first one we have is from Bradley Niven, who says, legit question, did a majority of Donbas citizens wish to join Russia 8 years ago?
To the majority? Well, technically, based off of what the Russians perpetrated, yeah, but really the answer is who knows, because it's a really complicated thing. The Russians fake a lot of polls and a lot of votes and stuff like that, and so it could have just been fake. But back then, it was a large support to go back to Russia. But that's kind of my answer to the question. That's a very iffy thing because the Russians just fabricate a lot of stuff. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And next up, we have a question from Reflection, who says, I'm really getting worried about the chip shortage they say that goes into our weapons. Lockheed Martin's CEO said that he can only double Javelin productions from 2,000 to 4,000. Should I be worried?
Nah, I wouldn't be worried too much because the United States really needed Javelins. They would just throw down the money and open up factories pretty much that would produce them. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. The United States has an unlimited budget compared to every other military on Earth, and they'll produce whatever they need whenever they need it in the amount they desire. So with that, I thank you so much for the question. I hope I did answer it. And with that, we're moving on to the last question of the night. And so, who's the lucky last person to throw down a question?
All right, so the last one is more of a statement than a question. It comes from Francis Antonio, who says, some of those Russian tanks now use semiconductors from salvaged Maytag and Whirlpool appliances. This came from the U.S. Commerce Secretary briefing to Congress today.
Well, I thank you for sharing that information with us, and I didn't actually know that that may have been what's actually happening with the washing machines. So that's very interesting, and I do thank you very much for providing that information to us. And so, with that, we have reached the end of tonight's stream. It has, of course, been a pleasure to report the news to all of y'all and tell y'all what has been going on in the past 24 hours of the war in Ukraine. If you have been watching this and you're brand new to this channel, welcome. You must be a trooper and you're going to stay around for a while. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you are new. You will get these notifications that the stream is running every single day of the week at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, except for Mondays. Once again, I thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow, once again at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, which will just be one day away from having the Holy Trinity on. Me, Ronnie Fit from Funker 530, and Operator Starsky all the same time for the last massive fundraiser we'll be running before we go into the reduced size fundraisers for the next few weeks. So, I thank you all once again. Take care, and have a great night.
Україна!